Welcome back to the Quiet Apothecary. Take a slow breath, settle into where you are, and let the shoulders soften a little. There is no hurry tonight, and nothing here that asks anything of you. You do not need to remember a single word that I am about to say. There will be no quiz at the end, and nothing to keep hold of, and nothing to carry forward into the morning. Let the words come and go like the slow steam from a warm cup, and let your eyes close whenever they wish to close. Tonight we are going far away, into the high cold mountains, into a place where the air is thin and the silence is very deep. Tonight we are going to the border country of old Tibet, into the long quiet of the mountains, nearly 1,000 years ago. In the slow centuries that we now call the 11th century, when the snows lay long upon the high passes, and the valleys were small and far apart, and the lamps of the herders were few and scattered across the great dark slopes like fallen stars. High up on a wide stone shoulder of the mountain, above the last of the trees, and below the long white line of the snow, there stands a single small hermitage of grey stone. It is a low square hut, no larger than a single room, with thick walls of fitted stone and a flat roof of timber and packed earth, and a low wooden door that faces toward the rising of the sun. A thin line of old prayer flags runs from the corner of the roof to a tall stone cairn a little way up the slope, and the flags, faded by the long years of wind and weather to the palest of blues and reds and yellows, lift and settle in the slow cold breath of the mountain night. There is a small spring nearby, where the clear cold water rises from the rock and runs away down the slope in a thin silver thread, and beside the door there is a low stone bench, worn smooth by the long sitting of many years. Inside the hut, in the deep dark hour before the dawn, there is one small light. It is the soft yellow flame of a single butter lamp. A small bowl of beaten brass, with a little clarified butter pooled in the bottom of it, and a thin twist of cotton wick standing up in the center of the pool, and a small steady flame at the tip of the wick, no larger than the end of a thumb. The little flame does not flicker, for the air in the hut is very still. It burns slow and steady and gold, and it throws a soft round pool of warm light upon the low stone wall, and the rest of the room lies in the deep blue dark of the mountain night. And in that small pool of soft yellow light, an old man lies sleeping upon a low wooden bed against the wall, wrapped in a heavy robe of dark wool and a worn sheepskin, with one arm folded beneath his head. His face is the face of a man who has lived a long time in the high cold air, weathered and brown and deeply lined, with a thin grey beard and a wide calm brow, and the slow deep breathing of a man who sleeps the untroubled sleep of the very tired and the very patient. He is the healer of this border country. He is the one we have come to follow tonight. That is where I would like to begin, there, in that small stone room, on that high cold mountain, in the deep blue hour before the dawn, with the single butter lamp burning soft and gold, and the old healer sleeping his slow deep sleep, and the great silence of the mountains lying over everything like a soft heavy snow. Tonight we will follow this one old man through one ordinary day, one slow day from the dark cold hour before the dawn, when he rises in the cold and lights the fire, through the slow gathering of the herbs upon the bright morning slopes, through the coming of the first visitor along the high stone path, through the long careful work of the grinding and the mixing and the brewing of the medicines, through the midday bowl of tea and barley meal, through the coming of the afternoon patient, through the turning of the long light of the evening upon the high white peaks, and at last into the long quiet of the mountain night, when the lamp burns low and the cold deepens, and the great wheel of the winter stars turns slowly over the snows. It will be a slow day. It will be a quiet day. It is a day 1,000 years old, and almost nothing will happen in it, and that is exactly as it should be. There will be no battles tonight, and no kings, and no great events that the histories remember. There will only be one old man, alone on a mountain, doing the slow, patient work of the healer, as it was done in that country in those long ago centuries, and we will sit with him through the hours, and watch the light come and go, and listen to the wind in the prayer flags, and let the slow turning of the day carry us gently down towards sleep. So settle in, wherever you are. Pull the blankets a little closer, the way the old healer pulls his sheepskin a little closer in the cold of the morning. There is a long, slow day ahead of us, and we have all the time in the world to walk through it. Let the body grow heavy, let the breathing slow, and let us begin very quietly in the dark, with the first stirring of the old man upon his low wooden bed. But before he wakes, before the day begins, let us look a little more closely at where we are, and at who this old man is, and at the long, slow tradition of healing that he carries in his patient hands. For the work that he will do tonight is very old, and very strange, and very beautiful, and to understand the day, we must first understand the cupboard, and the country, and the long road by which the healing came to these high, cold mountains. The country is Tibet, the great high plateau that lies between the mountains of India to the south and the deserts of Central Asia to the north, the highest inhabited country in all the world, where the land itself lies higher than the tops of most of the mountains of other lands, and the air is thin and clear and cold, and the sky is a deep hard blue, and the sun is fierce by day, and the frost is bitter by night. And we are not in the heart of that country, not in the great valleys of the south where the monasteries stand and the rivers run, but out on the eastern border, on the high, broken country, where the plateau begins to break down into the deep gorges and the steep, forested valleys that fall away toward the lands of China. It is a borderland, a place of herders and pilgrims and traders, of scattered tents and small stone villages, of high passes and long lonely roads, and of the few quiet hermits who live alone in the high places and serve the people who pass. The time is the 11th century, which is to say the long, slow span of years that we now count from the year 1000 to the year 1100. It is a time after the great old kings of Tibet, after the first flowering of the country, when the old royal line had fallen, and the country had broken into many small lordships and scattered valleys. But it is also a time of a great slow renewal, a time when the teachers and the translators were carrying the old wisdom out of India once more, over the high passes into the valleys of Tibet, a time when the monasteries were being built again, and the texts were being copied again, and the long, slow lamp of the old learning was being lit again in the high, cold country. It was, in its quiet way, a hopeful time, a time of careful rebuilding, and the old healer of our story is a small part of that slow rebuilding, a single small lamp in a single small hut, keeping the old knowledge alive in his patient hands. And who is he? He is an old man now, but he was not always old, and he was not always a hermit. As a boy, he was given by his family to a monastery in one of the great southern valleys, far from here, where he learned to read and to write, and where, because he had quiet hands and a patient mind, he was set to learn the healing arts under an old physician monk of that place. For many long years he studied. He learned the long texts by heart, reciting them in the cold dawn until the words ran in his blood. He learned the names of the plants and the parts of the body and the signs of the humors. He learned to read the pulse beneath his fingers and the color of the urine in the morning glass. He learned the grinding of the powders and the brewing of the decoctions and the burning of the healing points. And then, when he was no longer young, he left the great monastery and came out here to the high border country to live alone and serve the scattered people of the mountains, as a few quiet healers in every age have always chosen to do. He lives alone, but he is not lonely, or if he is lonely, he has made a long peace with it. The mountain is his company, and the wind, and the slow turning of the seasons, and the few visitors who climb the long path to his door when sickness comes upon them. He keeps a small garden of herbs in the short summer in a sheltered fold of the slope where the frost comes late. He gathers the wild plants of the high meadows in their season. He keeps a few goats and trades a little medicine for a little barley and a little butter and a little tea, and asks for nothing more. And in the long quiet of the evenings, by the soft light of his single butter lamp, he reads the old texts and recites the old prayers, and keeps the long slow lamp of the healing tradition burning in his patient hands. And what is that tradition? It has a name. In the Tibetan tongue it is called Sowa Rigpa, and the words mean, simply, the science of healing, the knowledge of how to make whole. It is one of the great old systems of medicine of the world, as old and as deep, and as careful in its own way as the great healing traditions of India and of China and of the old Greek physicians of the West. And in truth it is woven of all of them, for the story of how it came to be is a story of many roads meeting in one high country. The old story, the story the healers themselves tell, goes back to the great days of the old Tibetan kings, some 300 years before our quiet morning, in the 8th century, in the long ago time when a great king named Trisong Detsen ruled over a wide and powerful Tibet. This king, it is said, loved learning, and he sent out across the world for the wisest physicians of every land. And they came over the high passes and the long deserts, from India and from China, from Persia in the far west, and from the lands of the Greeks beyond, and from the small mountain kingdoms all around. And the king gathered them together at the great monastery of Sami in the southern valleys, and there, it is said, the physicians of all the lands laid down their knowledge side by side, and the Tibetan scholars listened and learned and gathered the best of all of it together and wove it slowly into a single great tradition, a tradition that was Tibetan in its heart, but that carried within it the long wisdom of half the world. We are not entirely sure how much of that old story is exactly as it happened, and how much has been softened and shaped by the long telling of the years, and that too is part of the story, and there is no need to be troubled by it. What is true is that the Tibetan healing tradition did indeed gather into itself the wisdom of many lands. From India, and from the great old Indian medicine that is called Ayurveda, the science of long life. It took the deep idea of the humas, the three great forces that move through the body and must be kept in their slow balance. From China, it took the careful art of reading the pulse beneath the fingers and the burning of the healing points upon the skin. From Persia, and from the old Greek physicians of the West, it took other small, careful pieces of its art. And all of it was gathered and softened and made Tibetan by the long, patient work of the healers of the high country over the slow centuries. At the heart of the whole tradition there stands a great text, or rather a set of 4 great texts woven together into one. In the Tibetan tongue, it is called the Jujue, and the words mean simply the 4 tantras, the 4 great roots of the teaching. It is a long and careful work, a whole world of medicine set down in verse, that the student healers learned by heart in the cold dawns of the monasteries, reciting it over and over until the whole great body of the knowledge ran in their memory like water in a riverbed. And it is a strange and beautiful thing, this great text, for it is set down not as a dry list of cures, but as a teaching given in a far medicine city, a city of healing, where a great sage of medicine sits and answers the questions of his students, and the whole long science unfolds in the slow turning of their questions and his answers. There is an old story about this great text, too, and it touches our own quiet century closely. It is said that the 4 tantras were first set down long ago, in the old days of the kings, by a great physician named Yuthok Yonten Gonpo, the old Yuthok, the elder of that name, who lived in the 8th century in the great days of King Trisong Detsen. But then, in the troubled years after the old kingdom fell, the great text was hidden away, concealed, it is said, within a pillar of a temple in the southern valleys, hidden like a seed against the long winter, to wait for a better day. And then, in the 11th century, in our own quiet century, the very century of our slow morning on the mountain, the hidden text was found again, drawn out of its hiding place by a seeker of the old hidden treasures, and brought back into the light, and copied again, and carried again over the high passes into the valleys of Tibet, so that the long lamp of the healing might be lit again in the high cold country. And later still, a younger Yuthok, the younger physician of that great name, who lived in the century after our own, would gather it all together once more and shape it and set it into the form in which it has come down through all the long years since. So you see that our old healer, alone in his hut on the high border, in the quiet of the 11th century, stands at a hinge of the long story. The old knowledge had been hidden, and now it was being found again. The old lamp had burned low, and now it was being lit again. And out here on the far border, the quiet healers like our old man were keeping the slow flame alive in their patient hands, brewing the old decoctions, reading the old pulses, burning the old healing points, and passing the long, slow knowledge on as it had been passed to them in the high, cold silence of the mountains. And what was the deep heart of that knowledge? It can be told very simply, and we will return to it again and again through the long day, so there is no need to hold it tight in the mind. The deep heart of the Tibetan healing was the idea of balance, the idea that health is balance and sickness is the loss of balance, and that the work of the healer is the slow, patient restoring of the balance that has been lost. and the balance was a balance of three great forces, three deep currents that the old healers called the Nyapa, the three humors, the three faults, the three things that can go wrong. The first they called Loom, which we might say as Relung, and the word means wind, the moving breath, the force of motion and of breath and of the swift currents of the mind, the wind that carries the thought and the heartbeat and the breath through the body. The second they called Trippa, and the word means bile, the force of fire and of heat, the warm burning force that ripens the food and warms the blood and gives the body its heat and its sharpness and its bright clear sight. And the third they called Beacon, and the word means phlegm, the force of earth and of water, the cool, heavy, steady force that holds the body together, that gives it its substance and its sleep, and its slow patience and its long endurance. In the body of a healthy person, the old healers taught, these three great forces, the wind and the bile and the phlegm, move together in a slow, even balance, like three slow rivers running side by side, each in its proper measure. And when one of them grows too strong, or too weak, or moves out of its proper place, then the balance is lost, and the body falls into sickness, and the work of the healer is to read which of the three has gone astray, and by what cause, and then, by the slow, patient arts of his tradition, to coax it gently back into its proper place, and restore the lost balance, and make the body whole again. And the first medicine, always before any powder or any decoction or any burning of the points, was not a medicine at all in the way we might think of it. The first medicine was food, and the second medicine was the way of living, the slow daily habits of the body, the sleeping and the waking and the working and the resting. Only when the food and the way of living were not enough did the healer turn to the powders and the decoctions of his cupboard. And only when those two were not enough did he turn at last to the external cures, the burning of the points and the letting of the blood and the gentle pressing of the healing places. The medicine of the high country was a slow medicine, a patient medicine, a medicine that began with the bowl of food and the way of the day, and reached for the strong cures only slowly, and only when they were truly needed. That is the tradition our old healer carries, and that is the country he carries it in, and that is the long road by which it came to him. And now the dark hour before the dawn is wearing thin, and a faint grey light is beginning, very far off, to touch the lower edge of the eastern sky, beyond the long dark line of the peaks. The butter lamp burns low. The cold is at its deepest now. In this last hour before the dawn, the way the cold is always deepest in the last hour before the dawn. And in his low wooden bed against the wall, wrapped in his dark wool and his worn sheepskin, the old healer stirs and draws a long slow breath and opens his eyes in the dark. Let us begin the day. The old healer lies still for a long moment in the dark, the way the old and the wise always lie still for a long moment before they rise, gathering themselves slowly out of sleep, letting the body remember that it is awake before they ask anything of it. He can feel the cold on his face, the deep hard cold of the last hour of the mountain night, and he can feel the small warmth that he himself has made beneath the heavy sheepskin, the small warm hollow that the body makes for itself in the long hours of sleep. And he lies in that small warm hollow for a little while longer, in no hurry at all, breathing slowly, listening to the silence. For the silence of the mountain in the hour before dawn is a very deep silence. It is not an empty silence. It is a full silence, a silence with a shape to it, a silence made of the small, far sounds that the silence allows you to hear. He can hear very faintly the thin run of the spring outside, the small silver thread of water running away down the slope over the cold stones. He can hear, now and again, the soft lift and settle of the old prayer flags in the slow breath of the wind. And he can hear, beneath everything, the great deep stillness of the mountain itself, the silence of the high stone, and the long snow, and the deep cold air, the silence that has lain over this place since long before he came, and will lie over it long after he is gone. He listens to that silence for a while, and then, slowly, he rises. He sits up in the dark, and the cold takes him at once, the deep hard cold of the morning, and he draws the heavy wool robe close around his shoulders, and swings his feet down onto the cold stone floor, and sits for a moment on the edge of the low bed, breathing slowly, letting the body come fully awake. His breath rises in a thin pale cloud in the soft yellow light of the butter lamp, for the air in the hut is cold enough now that the breath shows. He folds his hands together for a moment in his lap and bows his head, and says very softly, under his breath, the first small prayer of the morning, the prayer that the old healers say upon waking, a slow, quiet word of thanks for the night that is past and the day that is coming, a slow, quiet turning of the mind toward the work of the day. And then he rises to his feet, slowly, carefully, for the joints of an old man do not move quickly in the cold of the morning. And he stands for a moment in the soft yellow light, a tall stooped figure in a heavy dark robe, his breath rising in pale clouds, and he begins the slow patient work of the morning. The first thing always is the fire. For the fire is the heart of the hut, the warmth of the long cold day, the means of the cooking, and the brewing, and the boiling, and the small bright company of the long evenings. And so the old healer turns first to the hearth. The hearth is a low open fireplace in the center of the single room, a ring of fitted stones with a flat bed of ash, and above it, set into the timber and earth of the flat roof, a small square smoke hole open to the dark sky, through which the smoke of the fire rises out into the cold air, and through which, on a clear night, a single far star may sometimes be seen. The fire of the night before has long since died down, but the old healer kneels by the hearth and brushes the cold grey ash aside with a small wooden paddle, and there, deep in the bed of the ash, banked carefully the night before, a few small embers still glow, a soft deep red, the last sleeping warmth of yesterday's fire, kept alive through the long cold night. For the banking of the fire is one of the small careful arts of the high country, where the lighting of a new fire from cold is a long and difficult labor, and the keeping of a single ember alive through the night is worth more than gold. Before he slept, the old healer raked the live coals together and covered them carefully with a thick blanket of fine ash, so that the ash held the warmth in and let the air out, and the embers, smothered and slow, burned on through the night without ever quite dying, the way a sleeping thing breathes slow and shallow but does not stop. And now, in the cold of the morning, he uncovers them again and breathes them gently back to life. He takes a small handful of dry kindling from a basket beside the hearth, fine dry twigs of mountain juniper, and small splinters of dry root, and he lays them carefully over the glowing embers, and then he bends low and brings his face close to the bed of the fire, and blows, very softly, a long, slow, steady breath upon the embers, and the embers brighten under his breath, deep red to bright orange to a sudden small flame, and the dry juniper catches, and a thin curl of fragrant smoke rises up toward the smoke hole, and the first small flame of the day stands up bright and yellow in the dark of the hut, and the fragrance of the burning juniper fills the small room, a clean, sharp, sweet, resinous fragrance, the smell of the high mountain morning, the smell that is in that country, the very smell of prayer itself, for the juniper is burned upon the altars, and the mountain passes as an offering to the powers of the high places, and its fragrance is woven in the mind of every man and woman of that country, with the deepest and oldest feelings of reverence and of peace. The old healer breathes it in slowly as the fire grows, and feeds the small flame with larger sticks, slowly, patiently, until at last he can lay on a few larger pieces of dried dung from the basket, the dried dung of the goats and the wild creatures, gathered and dried in the short summer, which is the true and lasting fuel of the high country, where the trees are few and the wood is precious, and which burns slow and steady and hot, with a low quiet flame and a long even warmth. And now there is fire in the hut, and the first small warmth begins to spread out from the hearth into the cold room, and the old healer kneels back on his heels for a moment and warms his cold hands over the small new flame, turning them slowly, the way the cold always asks you to turn your hands slowly over a new fire, and his face, lit from below by the soft yellow flame, is calm and patient and content. But the morning is not finished with us yet, and the old healer is not finished with his small careful tasks. For now that the fire is lit, there is water to be fetched. He takes up a wide copper vessel from beside the hearth, a broad shallow pot of beaten copper, darkened by the long years of the fire, and he carries it to the low wooden door, and lifts the heavy wooden latch, and pushes the door open, and steps out into the dark and the cold of the morning. And outside the hut, the world is very wide, and very cold, and very still, and very beautiful. The sky has begun to pale a little in the east now, a faint cold grey light spreading slowly up from behind the long dark line of the peaks, and against that growing paleness the great mountains stand up black and sharp, fold upon fold of them, ridge beyond ridge, falling away into the deep blue dark of the valleys far below. Overhead, the last of the night stars still burn, hard and bright and cold in the thin high air, far brighter and far harder than the stars of the low countries ever burn, and the old healer pauses for a moment in the doorway and lifts his face to them, to the great cold wheel of the winter stars turning slowly over the snows, and feels, as he feels every morning, the great smallness of himself beneath that vast cold sky, and the strange deep peace of that smallness. Then he steps out across the frozen ground to the little spring, where the clear, cold water rises from the rock into a small stone basin and runs away down the slope in its thin silver thread. The edges of the basin are rimmed with ice, the thin, clear ice of the morning, and the old healer breaks the ice with the edge of his copper vessel, a small, bright, cracking sound in the great silence, and dips the vessel into the dark, cold water, and fills it, and lifts it, heavy now, and carries it slowly back across the frozen ground to the hut, his breath rising in pale clouds, the cold water trembling and shining in the broad copper pot, in the soft grey light of the dawn. And he carries the water in, and sets the copper vessel upon the iron tripod over the fire, the broad shallow pot of cold spring water settling down over the low quiet flame. And he banks the fire a little higher beneath it, and settles back on his heels to wait for the water to warm. For there is no hurrying of water over a fire, and the old healer has long since made his peace with the slow patience of the waiting. And while the water slowly warms, in the growing grey light of the dawn, the old healer turns to the second great work of the morning, which is the work of the prayers. For the old healer of the high country is not only a healer, he is also, in his quiet way, a man of religion, a man whose healing and whose faith are woven together so closely that they cannot be pulled apart. For in his tradition the healing of the body and the healing of the spirit are not two different things, but two faces of one single thing. And the great sage of medicine, the teacher of the four tantras, is himself a holy being, a being of perfect compassion, who teaches the science of healing out of his boundless wish to take away the suffering of all living things. And so the old healer begins his day. Every day, not with the medicine but with the prayer, with the slow quiet turning of his mind toward that great compassion, that he may carry it with him into the work of the day. In the corner of the hut, against the eastern wall, there stands a small simple altar, a low wooden shelf with a clean cloth laid over it, and upon it a few small precious things. There is a small bronze image of a seated holy being, a being of healing, seated in the calm posture of meditation, with a small bowl of medicine in his cupped hands, his face calm and wide, and full of a deep, quiet kindness. There are 7 small brass bowls set in a careful row, which the old healer fills each morning with clear water, as an offering, the simplest and the purest of all offerings, the offering of clear water, which costs nothing and is freely given, like the compassion it stands for. There is a small butter lamp, the brother of the one that burned through the night, and a small bundle of dried juniper, and a few old books wrapped in cloth, the precious texts of the tradition, the long loose leaves of the old writing pressed between 2 boards of carved wood, and bound up in a yellow cloth. The old healer kneels before the altar in the grey light of the dawn, and bows slowly 3 times, touching his folded hands to his brow and his throat and his heart, and then lowering himself to touch his brow to the cold stone floor. A slow full bow of the whole body, the body's own way of laying down its pride and its hurry and its small concerns. And then he settles himself, cross-legged, upon a worn cushion before the altar, and folds his hands in his lap, and closes his eyes, and begins very softly, under his breath, to recite the prayers of the morning. The prayers of the morning are old and slow, and they have a long, slow rhythm to them, like the slow turning of a prayer wheel, like the slow lift and settle of the prayer flags in the wind. The old healer says them softly, under his breath, in the old tongue, in the slow chanting murmur that the monks and the healers of that country have used for the saying of the prayers for longer than anyone can remember. A low, slow rise and fall, hardly louder than the run of the spring outside, and the sound of it fills the small hut like a slow, warm tide. He says first the prayers of refuge, the prayers in which the heart turns for shelter toward the great teachers and the great truth and the great company of the awakened. the slow turning of the spirit toward the things that do not change, in a world where everything changes. And then he says the prayers of compassion, the long, slow prayers in which the heart opens out toward all the living things of the world, toward every creature that breathes and suffers and dies, the high birds and the mountain goats, and the small creatures of the rock, and the scattered herders of the valleys, and the pilgrims on the long cold roads, and all the countless beings of all the countless worlds, and wishes them, slowly, one by one and all together, to be free of their suffering and to find their peace. And then, last of all, he says the special prayer of the healer, the prayer to the great sage of medicine, the holy being of healing whose small bronze image sits upon the altar with the bowl of medicine in his cupped hands. And in that prayer, the old healer asks, slowly, humbly, that he himself may be made a worthy vessel of the healing, that his hands may be steady, and his eye clear, and his heart kind, that he may rid the troubles of those who come to him truly, and choose the cures rightly, and bring some small easing of the suffering of the world. For the old healer does not think of himself as the one who heals. He thinks of himself only as a vessel, a small cup through which the healing flows, and the prayer of the morning is the slow daily cleaning of the cup, the slow daily turning of the heart toward the work, so that the healing may flow through him clean and clear. He says the prayers slowly, and there is no hurry in them, and when they are done he sits for a while longer in the silence, his eyes closed, his hands folded, his breathing slow and deep, and he lets his mind grow quiet and wide and still, like a high mountain lake at dawn when there is no wind, a lake so still that the great peaks are reflected in it without a single ripple. For this, too, is part of the work of the healer, this slow daily settling of the mind into stillness. For a healer with a troubled mind reads the body wrongly, and chooses the cures rashly. And the first cure that the old healer brings to anyone is the quiet of his own still mind, which settles upon the sick room like a soft snow, and slows the frightened breathing, and eases the troubled heart, before ever a single powder is ground or a single decoction brewed. And so the old healer sits in the grey growing light of the dawn, before his small simple altar, with the 7 bowls of clear water, and the small butter lamp, and the calm bronze face of the holy being of healing, and lets his mind grow still, while the water slowly warms over the fire, and the light slowly grows in the smoke hole overhead, and the great silence of the mountain lies over everything, deep and wide, and full of peace. Let us sit with him for a moment in that stillness before the day grows busy. There is no hurry. The water is not yet warm. The light is not yet up. Let the mind grow a little still, the way his mind grows still, like a high mountain lake at dawn with no wind upon it. Let the breathing slow. Let the small concerns of the day, whatever day it is for you, settle slowly to the bottom of the mind, like fine silt settling slowly to the bottom of a clear, still pool, and let the water above grow clear. And while he sits, let us turn to a small quiet matter, a small piece of the old healer's knowledge, so that we may understand a little better the work that he is about to do. For when the old healer rises from his prayers, the very first work of his medicine, before the tea is even drunk, before the herbs are even gathered, will be the slow, careful reading of his own body, the slow, careful checking each morning of his own 3 humours, his own lung and tripper and beacon, his own wind and bile and phlegm, that he may know the state of his own body, and keep it in its slow even balance, and so be fit and clear and steady for the work of the day. For this is one of the deep and quiet beauties of the old Tibetan healing, that it was not only a medicine for the sick, but a way of keeping the well in their wellness, a slow daily art of the keeping of the balance, practiced by the healers upon themselves, and taught by them to all who would learn, a slow daily attention to the body and its three slow currents, that the balance might be kept and the sickness never come at all. For the old healers held, as the deepest wisdom of their tradition, that the truest medicine is the medicine that is never needed. The slow daily keeping of the balance, that means the sickness never takes hold, and that a healer who could not keep his own body in balance had no business meddling with the bodies of others. And so each morning, when the prayers are done, the old healer turns his slow, careful attention inward upon his own body and reads the signs of the three humours within himself. He feels the quality of his own breath, slow or quick, smooth or rough, for the breath is the very voice of the wind humour, the loon, and a rough or hurried breath upon waking tells of a wind grown restless in the night. He feels the warmth of his own body, the warmth of his hands and his feet and his belly. For the warmth is the voice of the bile humour, the tripper, the fire of the body, and a body grown chill in the night, or a body grown too hot, tells of a fire fallen out of its balance. And he feels the heaviness or the lightness of his own limbs, the clearness or the dullness of his own waking mind. For these are the voices of the phlegm humour, the beacon, the cool, heavy, steady earth of the body, and a body grown too heavy, and a mind grown too dull tell of a phlegm grown thick and slow. He reads all of this in himself slowly, without hurry, the way a man who has kept a garden for 50 years reads the weather of the day in the small signs of the morning. And by the reading of it he knows how to order his day, what to eat and what to leave, when to work and when to rest, how to keep his own three slow rivers running side by side in their slow even balance. For the wisdom of the high country was a wisdom of slow daily attention, of the long patient watching of the small signs, and the old healer had watched his own body so long and so closely, that he read its small signs as easily as he read the weather of the sky. And this morning, as he sits in the grey light after his prayers and turns his attention inward, he finds his body in its slow even balance, the breath slow and smooth, the warmth steady and good, the limbs light and the mind clear. A body well rested by the long deep sleep, and well kept by the long careful years, and he is content, and he knows that he is fit for the work of the day. And so he opens his eyes, slowly, in the grey growing light, and unfolds his hands, and rises, slowly, from the worn cushion before the altar, and turns back toward the fire, where the broad copper vessel of spring water has begun, at last, to whisper softly over the low quiet flame. For the water is warming now, and the light is growing, and the long slow day is opening before us like a flower opening slowly in the morning sun. The first prayers are said, the first fire is lit, the first water is warming, and the old healer turns now to the next slow careful work of the morning, which is the reading of the signs of the dawn, the slow careful looking, before the day begins in earnest, at the small quiet messages that the body and the morning have to give. But before we follow him to that, let us pause just for a breath and notice how slow this morning is. How little has happened. An old man has woken in the cold, and said his prayers, and lit his fire, and fetched his water, and looked quietly into his own body. And that is all, and the sun is not even up. And yet there is a deep richness in it, a deep slow fullness, the fullness of a life lived slowly and attentively, with reverence for the smallest things, with patience for the slowest tasks, with a deep quiet peace in the doing of the ordinary work of the ordinary day. This is the pace of the high country, and the pace of the old healing, and the pace of this long slow night that we are spending together. Let it be slow. Let it be quiet. Let nothing be hurried. There is a whole long day ahead of us, and we have all the time in the world. The grey light grows. The water whispers over the fire. The old healer moves slowly about his small stone room in the soft, growing light of the dawn, and the day opens before us, slow and quiet and full of peace. Let us follow him on into the morning. The light in the smoke hole has turned now from grey to the first faint gold, and a long pale finger of dawn light has begun to reach in through the small window of the eastern wall, and to lie along the cold stone floor, and the old healer pauses for a moment in that first thin band of sunlight, and lets it touch his face, and feels the first faint warmth of the new day upon his skin. For the sun, in the high cold country, is a fierce and precious thing, and the first touch of it in the morning is a small daily gladness, a small daily blessing, after the long cold dark of the mountain night. And in that first thin light of the dawn, the old healer turns to the slow careful art that lies at the very heart of his whole tradition, the art of the reading of the body, the art by which the healer learns, from the small quiet signs of the flesh, the hidden state of the three humours within. For the body, in the teaching of the old healing, is always speaking, always telling its slow quiet story, in the beat of its pulse, and the colour of its water, and the look of its tongue, and the light of its eye. And the great work of the healer is to learn to read that slow quiet story, as a scholar learns to read the old letters, until the signs that are hidden to the untrained eye stand out clear and plain. And the two great readings, the two deepest and most trusted readings of the whole tradition, the two upon which the old healers leaned more than upon any others, were the reading of the pulse and the reading of the urine, and both of them are best done in the early morning, in the quiet hour after waking, before the body has eaten, before it has worked, before the day has stirred it up and clouded its slow, quiet signs. And so the old healer, this morning as every morning, reads first his own pulse and then his own water, as a way of keeping watch upon his own body, before ever a single patient climbs the long path to his door. The reading of the pulse is the older and the deeper of the two arts, and it is a strange and subtle thing. The old healer holds out his own left hand, and lays the three middle fingers of his right hand upon the inside of his own left wrist, just below the bone, where the pulse runs close beneath the skin. And he does not feel for one pulse, but for three. For in the teaching of the old healing, the pulse beneath the three fingers is not one single beat but three, and each of the three fingers reads a different reach of the body, and each presses to a different depth, the light touch reading one thing, and the deep touch reading another, so that beneath the three fingers, lightly and deeply pressed, there lie not three readings but six, and the trained healer reads all of them together, the way a musician hears all the voices of a chord at once. It is a thing that takes a lifetime to learn, and longer to learn well, and the old healer learned it slowly, over many long years, under the patient hand of his old teacher in the southern monastery, who would lay the boy's fingers upon a sick man's wrist and ask him, "What do you feel?" And the boy would say, "I feel a pulse," and the old teacher would shake his head slowly and say, "Feel again." And over the long years the boy learned to feel, beneath his fingers, not merely the beat of the blood, but the quality of the beat, whether it was swift or slow, strong or weak, full or empty, smooth or rough, deep or shallow, taut as a stretched string or soft as a sinking stone, and to read in those qualities the slow story of the three humours within. For each of the three humours, the old healing taught, leaves its own mark upon the pulse. The pulse of the wind humour, the lung, is a floating, empty, halting pulse that rises and falls and skips and pauses, like a wind that gusts and dies, like a flag that lifts and settles in an unsteady breeze. The pulse of the bile humour, the tripper, is a swift, taut, full pulse that beats hard and fast and strong, like a galloping horse, like the swift run of a fevered stream. And the pulse of the phlegm humour, the beacon, is a deep, slow, soft, sunken pulse that beats low and slow and heavy beneath the deeper press of the finger, like a slow, deep river running far below the surface of the earth. And the trained healer, feeling all of these together beneath his three light fingers, reads from them the whole slow balance of the body, which humour is strong and which is weak, which has risen and which has fallen, and where in the body the trouble lies. This morning, the old healer lays his fingers upon his own wrist and feels and finds his own pulse slow and even and smooth, a calm, steady pulse, neither swift nor halting, neither taut nor empty, a pulse in its slow, even balance, the pulse of a man whose three humours run side by side in their proper measure, and he is content, and he lifts his fingers from his wrist and turns to the second reading. The reading of the urine is the other great art, and it is read, like the pulse, best in the early morning, in the first water of the day. For that water has gathered in the body through the long still hours of the night, and carries in it, the old healers taught, the truest report of the night's slow workings of the humours. And so the old healer fills a small clean cup with the first water of the morning, and carries it to the window, where the first thin light of the dawn falls clear, and holds it up to the light, and reads it slowly, with the long patient attention of his trade. He reads first the colour of it, for the colour tells of the heat or the cold of the body, of the balance of the fire within. A pale, clear, thin, watery urine, like clear spring water, tells of a body grown cold, of a fire fallen low, of a phlegm or a wind grown too strong. A deep, dark, reddish or yellowish urine, thick and strong in colour, tells of a body grown hot, of a fire risen too high, of a bile grown too strong. And a urine of a good clear middling colour, like pale gold, like a light clear barley beer, tells of a body in its slow even balance, a fire neither too high nor too low. He reads next the steam that rises from it, while it is still warm, the small fine vapour that lifts from the surface of the warm water in the cold morning air, for the steam, too, tells its slow story of the heat of the body and the speed of its workings. He reads the small bubbles that gather on the surface when the water is stirred, large or small, quick to break or slow to fade, for the bubbles, too, are read in the old tradition, and a urine of large quick bubbles tells of one trouble, and a urine of fine slow bubbles tells of another. And he reads the small sediment, if there is any, that settles slowly to the bottom of the cup, as the water cools and stands, the fine cloud or the small grains that gather at the bottom, for these, too, are read slowly, patiently, as the water cools and settles in the cup over the long, slow minutes of the morning. It is a slow art, the reading of the water, an art of patience, an art of the long quiet looking, and the old healer reads his own water this morning as he reads it every morning, slowly, by the window, in the first thin gold of the dawn, and finds it of a good clear pale gold, with a fine even steam and a small even cloud of bubbles, the water of a body in its slow even balance, and he is content. And he carries the cup to the door, and pours the water out upon the frozen ground, and rinses the cup in the cold spring water, and turns back into the hut, where the broad copper vessel is whispering now over the fire, and the time has come at last for the first bowl of the day. For the old healer has not yet eaten, and an old man on a cold mountain needs his warmth and his strength, and the first food of the day in that high country is a thing of great and simple goodness, a thing that has sustained the people of those high cold lands for longer than anyone can remember. The two great staples of the mountain table, the butter tea and the roasted barley meal, the cha and the tsampa, the warm salt butter tea and the soft toasted barley flour, which together make the slow simple breakfast of the high country, and the slow simple comfort of the cold morning. The butter tea is made first. The old healer lifts the broad copper vessel of warm spring water from the fire, and into it he crumbles a small dark piece of the brick tea, the pressed black tea that comes up over the long trade roads from the warm lands of China far to the east, traded leaf by leaf and brick by brick across the high passes, so precious in that high country that it is used almost as a money, and so beloved that no day there begins without it. He crumbles the dark dry tea into the warm water and sets the vessel back over the fire, and lets it come slowly to the boil, and then lets it simmer slowly for a long while, far longer than the people of the Low Countries would ever simmer their tea, until the water has darkened to a deep red brown and drawn out all the deep, strong bitterness of the old pressed leaf. And then he strains the dark tea through a small woven strainer into a tall, narrow wooden churn, a long hollow cylinder of wood, worn smooth by the long years of use, and into the dark hot tea he puts a knob of the yellow butter, the rich butter of the mountain goats and the great shaggy mountain cattle. The butter that is the very fat and richness and warmth of the high country, and a pinch of the grey rock salt, the salt that comes up, like the tea, over the long trade roads from the dry salt lakes of the northern plateau. And then he takes up the long wooden plunger of the churn and works it up and down in the long narrow cylinder with a slow steady rhythm, a soft rhythmic sound in the quiet of the hut, the slow soft swish and thump of the churning, up and down, until the dark tea and the yellow butter and the grey salt are beaten together into a smooth, warm, rich red brown drink, thick and warm and faintly oily upon the surface, the salt butter tea of the high country, which is not really a tea at all in the way the Low Countries think of tea, but a warm, rich, nourishing broth, half drink and half food, that warms the cold body and feeds the long day and is loved in that high country beyond all other things. And the Tsampa is the other half of the morning. The Tsampa is the roasted barley meal, the toasted flour of the hardy mountain barley that grows in the short summers of the high valleys, the barley that is parched over the fire until it is toasted golden brown and faintly sweet, and then ground upon a small stone hand mill into a fine, soft, pale brown flour, and stored in a leather bag against the long winter. And the old healer takes a wooden bowl and pours into it a measure of the warm butter tea, and into the warm tea he spoons a measure of the soft toasted Tsampa flour, and then with the fingers of one hand he works the flour and the tea together slowly in the bowl, turning and pressing and folding until the flour has drunk up the tea, and the two have come together into a soft warm dough, a soft warm bowl of toasted barley and salt butter tea, which he breaks off in small pieces and eats slowly with his fingers in the soft gold light of the dawn, washing it down with slow sips of the warm rich tea. And that is the breakfast of the high country, and the breakfast of the old healer on this cold bright morning, the warm salt butter tea and the soft toasted barley dough, the cha and the Tsampa, a slow simple meal of deep warmth and deep goodness that warms the cold body from within and feeds the long work of the day. And the old healer eats it slowly, sitting cross-legged by the fire in the growing gold light of the morning, in no hurry at all, savoring each warm mouthful, listening to the slow lift and settle of the prayer flags outside, and the thin run of the spring, and the great deep silence of the mountain, holding everything, when the bowl is empty and the last of the warm tea is drunk. The old healer wipes the wooden bowl clean with a small cloth and sets it upon its shelf, for in the high country, where the water is scarce and the cold is hard, the bowls are not washed but wiped, and a man keeps his own bowl and no other all the long years of his life. And then he rises slowly and stretches his back and looks toward the door, where the morning light is now full and bright and gold. And he knows that the time has come to go out, up onto the slopes, to gather the herbs of the morning, while the day is young and the plants are at their best. For the gathering of the herbs is one of the great works of the healer, and one of the slow, quiet joys of his solitary life, and the morning, the early morning, is the time for it, before the high sun has climbed too far and burned the dew from the leaves and drawn the slow strength up out of the plants. The old healer takes up his gathering things, a worn leather satchel that hangs across his shoulder, and a small curved knife of good iron with a handle of horn, worn smooth by the long years, and a few small cloth bags for the keeping of the different herbs apart, and a long staff of seasoned juniper wood, polished by his hand, to steady his old steps upon the steep and broken ground. And he wraps his heavy robe close, and pulls a fold of it up over his head against the cold, and steps out through the low wooden door into the bright cold morning. And outside, the world is transformed from the grey cold world of the dawn. The sun is up now, climbing clear of the eastern peaks, and the whole great landscape is flooded with a hard, bright, golden light, so clear and so sharp in the thin high air that every stone and every blade of grass stands out distinct, every fold of the far mountains, every patch of snow upon the high slopes. The sky is the deep, hard blue of the high country, a blue so deep it is almost violet at the top, and against it the great snow peaks stand up dazzling white, so bright in the morning sun that the eye can hardly bear them. The frost is still upon the ground in the long blue shadows, but where the sun has reached, the frost has melted into a fine bright dew that catches the light and scatters it in 1,000 small fires across the grass. The old healer stands for a moment in his doorway and breathes in the cold, bright air, the thin, clean, cold air of the morning, which has a taste to it. In that high country, a clean, cold, mineral taste of snow and stone and the high, thin sky, and he feels it fill his lungs and clear his head, and then he sets off, slowly, leaning on his staff, up the slope behind the hut, toward the high meadows where the herbs grow. The slope rises steeply behind the hermitage, a long broken slope of grey rock and short, tough grass and low cushions of mountain plants, climbing toward a high shoulder of the mountain where, in the short summer, a wide green meadow opens out, watered by the snowmelt, starred with the small bright flowers of the high country. The old healer climbs slowly, in no hurry, stopping often to catch his breath, for the air is thin at that great height, and an old man's lungs work hard in it, and stopping often, too, simply to look, to rest his eyes upon the great spreading view of the mountains, fold beyond fold, falling away into the blue distance, and the small dark valleys far below, where the smoke of a herder's tent might rise in a thin blue thread, and the great white peaks all around, turning slowly gold and then white as the sun climbed higher. And as he climbs, he gathers. For the high slopes of that country, barren as they seem to the unknowing eye, are in truth a great open cupboard of medicine, a wild garden of healing plants. If a man has the eyes to see them and the knowledge to use them. And the old healer has both, learned over the long years, and as he climbs the slope he reads the ground the way another man reads a page, knowing where each plant grows and in what season and how it is best gathered, and he stops here and there and kneels and cuts a few stems with his small curved knife and lays them carefully in his satchel, slowly building up the small store of the morning's gathering. And what does he gather on the high cold slopes of the Tibetan border in the bright morning of the 11th century? He gathers the plants of his tradition, the herbs of the high country, each with its long history and its careful use. He gathers the small tough mountain rhubarb, whose thick yellow root, dug from the stony ground, is one of the great medicines of the high country, a cooling, opening root used for the heat of the bile gone too high, for the slow clearing of the body, prized so highly that it was carried, in the old days, all the way to the lands of the West, a treasure of the trade roads. He gathers the small grey aromatic leaves of the high mountain wormwoods and the mountain sages, the bitter clean herbs of the dry slopes, used for the warming of the cold body, and the settling of the troubled stomach, and the cleaning of the air, burned in their dried form, as a fragrant smoke in the sick room, and upon the altar. He gathers, where he finds it in its sheltered hollow, the small precious gentian of the high country, the deep blue trumpet flower of the alpine slope, whose bitter root is one of the great fever medicines of the tradition, a cold, strong root for the cooling of the bile and the breaking of the fever, and the clearing of the heat from the liver and the blood. He gathers the small saffron-colored flowers and the aromatic seeds of the high country herbs, the small caraways and the wild cumins of the mountain meadow. the warming aromatic seeds that settle the stomach and ease the wind and bring a slow comfort to the cold and griping belly. And he gathers with special care, for it is rare and precious and slow to grow, the small strange thing that grows in the high meadows of that country, half plant and half something stranger, a small medicine of the high grass that the healers of that country have prized for long ages as a great strengthener of the weak and the weary and the old, a slow restorer of the failing strength of the body, gathered with care and dried with care and used with care, a little at a time, over the long winters. And he gathers, too, the simpler things, the everyday herbs of the cupboard, the small nettles of the damp hollows for the strengthening of the blood, the small mountain thymes and the mountain savories for the seasoning of the food and the easing of the cough, the small bright berries of the mountain shrubs in their season, the sea buckthorn berry that grows in the river gravels of that country, small and orange and fiercely sour, so full of goodness that it is pressed and dried, and kept all winter as a great strengthener against the long cold and the long dark, used for the lungs and the blood and the slow keeping of the strength through the hungry months. All of these the old healer gathers, slowly, kneeling and rising, cutting and lifting, laying each in its place in the satchel and its bags, working slowly up the long bright slope in the clear gold light of the morning. And it is a slow and quiet and meditative work, the gathering of the herbs, a work that asks of the healer the same slow patient attention that the prayers ask, and the reading of the pulse asks, and all the slow quiet works of his trade. For each plant must be gathered in its proper season, and in its proper hour, and in its proper way, the root in the autumn when the strength has gone down into it, the leaf in the early summer when the strength is up in it, the flower at its first full opening, the seed at its first full ripening, and each must be cut cleanly, and never wholly stripped from any one place, but taken a little here and a little there, that the wild garden may renew itself and never be exhausted, for the old healer takes only what he needs, and leaves always more than he takes, and gives thanks, in his quiet way, to each plant that he gathers, with a small soft word, for the giving of its life to the easing of the suffering of others. And as he gathers, the morning sun climbs slowly higher, and the long blue shadows shorten upon the slopes, and the frost melts from the grass, and the high meadow comes alive with the small bright life of the mountain morning, the small high birds that pipe and flit among the rocks, the bright butterflies that open their wings to the morning sun, the small marmots that whistle from the tops of the boulders and watch the old man with their bright dark eyes, and the great slow shadows of the high circling birds, the lammergeiers and the high eagles, that turn and turn upon the rising air far overhead, dark crosses against the deep blue sky. And the old healer works on, slowly, through it all, a small bent figure in a dark robe, moving slowly up the bright slope, in the great morning, gathering the slow medicine of the mountain into his worn leather satchel. But the morning is wearing on, and the satchel is growing heavy, and the old healer has climbed nearly as high as he means to climb this morning, up to the wide shoulder of the high meadow, where the slope levels out for a little before rising again toward the snow, and where, from a certain flat grey rock that he knows well, a man may sit and rest and look out over the whole great spreading world of the mountains, fold beyond fold, snow peak beyond snow peak, into the far blue distance, and the old healer climbs the last few steps up onto that high shoulder slowly, leaning on his staff, his breath coming hard in the thin air. And he comes to the flat grey rock, and he sets down his heavy satchel, and he lowers himself slowly, with the slow care of the old, to sit upon the rock, and to rest, and to look out over the world. And there is one more thing worth saying before we go on, one small quiet thing about this old healer and this high cold place. He is not lonely up here, on the high shoulder of the mountain, alone in all that great spreading silence. Or if there is a loneliness in it, it is a loneliness he has long since made his friend, and turned into something else, something quieter and deeper and more like peace. For the high places in the wisdom of his tradition are holy places, places where the air is thin and the world is far and the mind grows naturally still and clear. And the hermits and the healers of that country sought out the high lonely places, not in spite of their loneliness, but because of it. Because in the great silence of the high mountains, the small noisy chatter of the mind falls quiet at last, and a man may hear, beneath it, the deep slow quiet that was always there. The old healer sits upon the flat grey rock at the top of the high shoulder, and rests, and looks out over the world, and lets the slow peace of the high places settle upon him. The sun is well up now, a hard bright disk in the deep blue sky, and the whole great landscape lies spread out below him in the clear morning light, ridge beyond ridge, valley beyond valley. The near slopes brown and grey, and patched with the last white snow, the far ranges turning blue, and then violet, and then the palest grey, as they fall away into the great distance, and over them all, the great white peaks, the high snows, standing up clean and dazzling against the deep blue sky, eternal and silent, and utterly still. He sits there a long while, in no hurry at all, breathing slowly, his hands folded in his lap, the heavy satchel of herbs at his feet, and lets his eyes rest upon the great spreading world, and his mind grows still and wide and quiet, as wide and quiet as the great spaces before him. For there is a medicine in this, too, the old healer knows, a medicine that is not in any of his cupboards and cannot be ground or brewed, the slow medicine of the high silence and the great view and the long resting of the eye upon the far distance, which loosens the tight knots of the mind and the heart, and slows the hurried breath, and brings a slow, deep peace to the troubled spirit, the way nothing in any cupboard ever can. And while he sits there resting, in the great morning silence, far below him, on the long stony path that winds up the lower slopes toward the hermitage, a small figure has begun to climb. The old healer sees it after a while, a small dark figure far below, toiling slowly up the long path, and he watches it for a time, with the slow patient interest of a man who lives alone and sees few people. And after a while he sees that it is a herder, a young man of the high valleys, in the rough wool and the sheepskin of the herding people, and that he is climbing toward the hermitage, slowly, steadily, with the long tireless stride of a man who has walked the high country all his life. And the old healer knows, in the way that he has come to know such things over the long years, that the young herder is climbing the long path to seek him out for some trouble of the body, his own or another's, and that the first work of his healing day is now climbing slowly toward him up the long stony path. And so the old healer rises slowly from the flat grey rock, and shoulders his heavy satchel, and takes up his staff, and begins to make his way back down the slope toward the hermitage, slowly, carefully, to meet the young herder at his door. And he comes down the slope as the young herder comes up the path, and the two of them come together at last at the door of the hermitage, in the bright cold morning, and the young herder stops and bows, and presses his palms together, and greets the old healer with the slow courteous greeting of the high country, and the old healer returns the greeting, slowly, kindly, and looks at the young man with his slow patient eye, already reading, in the way he stands, and the color of his face, and the look of his eye, the first faint signs of whatever trouble has brought him up the long path. And the young herder tells his trouble slowly, haltingly, in the way of the herding people, who are not great talkers, and the old healer listens patiently, without hurry, nodding slowly, asking a quiet question now and then. It is not the young man himself who is sick, it turns out, but his old father and old herder of the high valleys, who has been taken with a slow griping pain in the belly these last days, and a heaviness, and a loss of all his hunger, and a slow chill in the limbs that no fire will warm, and who lies now in the family tent in the valley below, growing slowly weaker. And the young man has climbed the long path to the hermitage to seek the old healer's help, and to ask, if it is not too much, that the old healer might come down to the valley to see the old man, or, if that is too far for the old healer's own old legs, that he might at least send down some medicine, and some word of what should be done. And the old healer listens to all of this, slowly, patiently, and nods, and asks his quiet questions, drawing out from the young man, little by little, the slow story of the old father's trouble, when it began, and how it came on, and what the old man has eaten, and how he has slept, and what the color of his face is, and whether he is hot or cold, and whether the pain is sharp or dull, and whether it comes and goes or lies always in the one place. For the old healer cannot read the old father's pulse, for the old father is far below in the valley, but he can read from the young son's slow account, and from his own long knowledge of the troubles of that country, a great deal of the slow story of the old man's sickness, and he listens and nods and turns it slowly over in his still wide mind. But before he decides anything, before he names the trouble or chooses the cure, the old healer does a thing that may seem strange, but that lies at the very heart of his slow, patient art. He invites the young herder into the hut, out of the cold, and he sits him down by the fire, and he pours him a bowl of the warm butter tea, and he takes the young man's own wrist, the wrist of the son and not the father, and he reads the young man's pulse. For the young man has come down from the same tent, eaten the same food, breathed the same air, lived the same life as the sick old father, and his pulse, the old healer knows, may carry some faint echo of the trouble that lies upon the family, some faint sign of the bad food, or the bad water, or the bad air, or the cold damp season that has brought the sickness on. And so the old healer lays his 3 fingers upon the young herder's wrist, and grows still and reads. And it is worth our while, here in the quiet of the morning, with the young herder warming his hands by the fire, and the old healer's fingers resting light upon his wrist, to understand a little more deeply this strange and beautiful art of the pulse, which is the very heart of the old Tibetan healing, and which the old healer is practicing now in the soft firelight of his hut. For the old healing taught that the pulse is the meeting place of the whole body, the one small place where the slow inner workings of the whole great body rise to the surface, and may be read by the patient finger, the way the slow inner workings of a great deep lake may sometimes be read in the small ripples and currents of its surface. The blood, the old healers taught, runs out from the heart to every corner of the body and carries with it, in its running, the slow report of every corner of the body, and comes back again to the great vessels of the wrist, where it runs close beneath the skin, and where the patient finger, laid lightly upon it, may read the whole slow report of the whole great body in the small quiet beating of the pulse. And the reading of it, as we have said, is not the reading of one pulse but of many. The old healer lays his 3 fingers upon the wrist, the first finger nearest the hand, the second below it, the third below that, and each of the 3 fingers, the old healing taught, reads a different region of the body, a different pair of the inner organs, the upper finger reading the organs of the upper body, the heart and the lungs, the middle finger reading the organs of the middle body, the liver and the stomach and the spleen, the lower finger reading the organs of the lower body, the kidneys and the bowels and the deep places. And each finger reads 2, at 2 depths, a light touch reading one organ, and a deep touch reading its paired organ, so that beneath the 3 fingers, lightly and deeply pressed, the whole inner landscape of the body is laid out for the reading, region by region, organ by organ, in the small quiet beating of the blood. And there is one more strangeness, one more subtlety in the reading of the pulse, which is this. The old healing taught that the left wrist and the right wrist are not the same, and that the healer must read both, and that the pulse of a man is read differently from the pulse of a woman, the fingers and the wrists crossed over in the reading of the one and not the other. For the deep currents of the body, the old healers held, run differently in the man and in the woman, and the wise healer reads each according to its own nature. And the healer must read too, the season and the time of day and the age of the patient, and even his own state of body and mind. For all of these, the old healing taught, color the pulse, and must be allowed for in the reading, the way a wise reader of the weather allows for the season and the hour in his reading of the sky. It is, you see, a deep and subtle and difficult art, an art of a lifetime, and the old healer has spent his lifetime upon it, and reads the pulse now, in the soft firelight, the way a master musician reads a complex and subtle music, hearing all its voices at once, the swift and the slow, the deep and the shallow, the strong and the weak, and gathering from them all, slowly, the whole slow story of the body beneath. And what he reads this morning in the wrist of the young herder is the faint echo that he was seeking, a faint thickness and slowness and coldness in the pulse, a faint dulling of the bile, the warm fire of the body, and a faint rising of the bacon, the cold heavy phlegm, the sign of a body and a household and a season gone too cold and too damp and too heavy, the cold heavy season of the late winter, when the food has grown old and the body has grown weary, and the cold has crept deep into the bones, and the warm fire of digestion has fallen low, and the cold heavy phlegm has risen up and dampened it down, and the slow griping cold sickness has crept into the belly of the old father in the valley below. And so the old healer lifts his fingers from the young herder's wrist, slowly, and sits back, and turns the slow reading over in his still wide mind, and begins slowly to name the trouble, and to understand it in the way of his tradition. For the naming of the trouble is itself a slow and careful art, and it is not the naming that the medicine of the Low Countries would give. The old healer does not think, the old father has this disease or that disease, with a single name, the way a man might pick a single stone from a heap. He thinks rather, in the slow way of his tradition, of the balance of the three humours, and of how that balance has been lost, and of the long slow chain of causes by which it was lost. And the naming of the trouble is the slow tracing of that chain, the slow understanding of how the balance fell, that the cure may set about, slowly, patiently, to raise it up again. And here, in the quiet of the morning, with the fire burning low, and the young herder warming his hands, and waiting patiently, let us turn once more, a little more deeply, to that great slow idea that lies at the heart of the old healing. The idea of the three humours, the Nipasum, the wind and the bile and the phlegm, the lung and the tripper and the beacon. For it is the deep ground of everything that the old healer does, and the more we understand it, the more we shall understand the slow patient work of his day. The three humours, the old healing taught, are the three great forces that move through every living body, the three slow rivers that run side by side through the flesh, and upon whose slow even balance the whole health of the body depends. And they are not, you must understand, three substances that you could find and point to and hold in the hand, the way you could hold a bone or a drop of blood. They are forces, currents, qualities, ways of moving and ways of being, the three great ways in which the life moves through the body, and they are present everywhere in the body, in every part and every working, the wind and the fire and the earth and water, woven together into the living whole. The first is the wind, the lung, the relung, the moving breath. It is the force of motion in the body, all motion, the motion of the breath in the lungs, the motion of the blood in the vessels, the motion of the food through the belly, the motion of the limbs, the motion of the swift currents of thought and feeling through the mind. It is the swiftest and the lightest and the most subtle of the three, and it is the most easily disturbed, the most easily thrown out of its balance, by hurry and by worry, and by fear and by grief, and by the long, cold, thin air of the high country. And when it rises too high and runs too wild, it brings a restlessness to the body and the mind, a sleeplessness, a trembling, a racing of the heart, a wandering of the thought, a dryness and a thinness and a cold, for the wind, when it blows too strong, scatters the warmth and dries the body, and will not let it rest. The second is the bile, the tripper, the warm fire. It is the force of heat in the body, the warm burning force that ripens and transforms, the fire that cooks the food in the belly and turns it into the warmth, and the strength of the body, the heat that warms the blood, the brightness that sharpens the eye and the wit, the bright fierce force of courage and of anger and of clear hard thinking. It is the warmest and the sharpest of the three, and when it rises too high and burns too hot, it brings a fever to the body, a heat, a thirst, a sharpness, a redness, a quickness to anger, a burning in the belly, a yellowing of the eye and the skin, for the fire, when it burns too strong, scorches the body and dries its fluids and inflames its tempers. And the third is the phlegm, the bacon, the cool, heavy earth and water. It is the force of substance and of stability in the body. The cool, heavy, steady force that holds the body together and gives it its solid form, the flesh and the fat and the fluids. The force of patience and of steadiness and of deep, untroubled sleep, the slow, cool earth in which the body is rooted. It is the heaviest and the coolest and the slowest of the three, and when it rises too high and grows too thick, it brings a heaviness to the body, a coldness, a dullness, a slowness, a loss of hunger, a thickening of the slow fluids, a damp, cold weight that smothers the warm fire of the body and dampens it down, for the earth, when it grows too thick, chokes the fire and stops the motion and weighs the body down into a cold, dull heaviness. And it is just this last, the rising of the cold, heavy phlegm, the smothering of the warm fire of digestion, that the old healer has read in the wrist of the young herder and understands now, slowly, in the case of the old father in the valley below, for he can see the whole slow chain of it. The long, cold winter, the cold, heavy season of the phlegm, the old food grown stale, the cold, damp tent, the failing warmth of an old body grown weary with the years, all of it has slowly raised the cold, heavy phlegm and slowly dampened down the warm fire of the old man's digestion, until the warm fire that should cook the food and warm the body has fallen too low to do its work, and the food lies cold and undigested in the cold belly, griping and aching, and the body cannot draw its warmth and its strength from the food, and grows slowly weaker and colder and more weary, in the slow, cold downward spiral of the cold sickness of the late winter. And so the cure is plain to the old healer, plain and slow and patient, in the way of his tradition. The cure is to raise the fallen fire, and to drive out the cold, heavy phlegm, and to warm the cold belly, and to coax the warm fire of digestion slowly back to its proper strength, so that it may cook the food again, and warm the body again, and the old man may slowly find his hunger, and his warmth and his strength once more. And the cure will be a warming cure, a cure of warm and pungent and kindling things. The warm aromatic seeds, and the warm pungent roots that the old healer gathered upon the slope this very morning, that fan the low fire of the belly back to life, and a warm and easily digested food, and a warm dry tent, and a warm bed, and the warm slow patience of the household, until the slow fire rises again and the slow balance is restored. And so the old healer rises, slowly, from beside the fire, and turns to the slow, careful work of the making of the medicine, the grinding and the mixing and the brewing, which is the heart of the apothecary's craft, and which he has done 10,000 times in the long years of his life, and does now, slowly, patiently, in the soft firelight of his hut, while the young herder watches from beside the fire. He goes first to the long shelf against the wall, where the herbs of his cupboard are kept, the dried herbs of many seasons, hanging in small bundles from the rafters, or stored in small cloth bags and small clay jars along the shelf, each carefully kept, each carefully labeled in his mind. For the old healer keeps no written labels, but carries the whole great cupboard in his memory, every herb and every use, the long inheritance of his years. And from the shelf he chooses, slowly, the herbs of the warming cure, taking down a small bag here and a small jar there, and setting a small careful measure of each upon a clean cloth before him. He takes the warm, pungent dried ginger, the great warming root of the high cupboard, the root that kindles the cold fire of the belly like a small sun, brought up over the long trade roads from the warm lands of the south and kept dry and precious in a small clay jar. He takes the small warm aromatic seeds that he gathered on the slope, the wild caraways and the mountain cumins, the warming seeds that ease the wind and settle the cold griping belly. He takes a small careful pinch of the precious warm spices of the trade roads, the small dark cloves and the small brown cardamoms and the warm sweet cinnamon bark, the precious warming spices that come up from the warm lands of India over the high passes, used a little at a time, with care, in the strong warming cures, for the rich warming of the cold body and the kindling of the fallen fire. And he takes a small careful measure of the warm pungent pipali, the long pepper of the southern lands, one of the great warming medicines of the whole tradition, a small dark wrinkled spike of fierce warm pungency that kindles the cold fire of the belly and drives out the cold heavy phlegm. And he sets all of these together, the warm root and the warm seeds and the warm precious spices, in their small careful measures, upon the clean cloth before him, slowly, one by one, weighing each in his eye and his long knowledge, balancing the whole compound as a man might balance a fine and subtle thing. A little more of this for the deep warming, a little less of that, for it is fierce. A small softening measure of a gentler thing to round the whole and ease it on the cold, weak belly. For the making of a compound medicine, in the old tradition, was a thing of great subtlety. The balancing of many herbs into one whole, each chosen for its part, the chief herb that does the great work, the helping herbs that aid it, the guiding herbs that carry it to its place in the body, the harmonizing herbs that smooth the whole and ease its working, all balanced together, slowly, carefully, into a single subtle medicine, as a master cook balances the many flavors of a fine dish into a single whole. And when the herbs are all chosen and all measured and all gathered upon the clean cloth before him, the old healer turns to the grinding of them, which is the next slow careful work of the craft. For the herbs must be ground, the hard roots and the dry seeds and the precious spices ground down into a fine even powder, that they may give up their slow strength fully and evenly when they are brewed, and that they may be measured truly into the small careful doses of the cure. And so the old healer takes up his grinding stone, the heavy mortar and pestle of dark stone that has served him all the long years, a deep round bowl of hard dark stone, and a heavy stone pestle worn smooth and round by the long years of grinding, and he sets it upon the floor before him, and he tips into it the small careful measures of the herbs, and he takes up the heavy pestle in his old hands, and he begins, slowly, to grind. And the grinding is a slow, rhythmic, patient work, the slow heavy turning of the stone pestle round and round in the deep stone bowl, the slow crushing and grinding of the hard roots and the dry seeds beneath the heavy stone, and it makes a soft, low rhythmic sound in the quiet of the hut, a slow, soft, grinding rumble, round and round and round, that fills the small room like the slow turning of a quiet wheel. And the old healer grinds slowly, in no hurry, leaning his weight upon the pestle, turning it round and round, pausing now and then to scrape the powder down from the sides of the bowl with a small horn spoon, and to look at it, and to feel its fineness between his old finger and thumb, and then bending again to the slow patient grinding, round and round and round. and as he grinds, the small room fills slowly with the warm, rich fragrance of the herbs, the warm, pungent fragrance of the ginger and the long pepper, the warm, sweet fragrance of the cinnamon and the cardamom, the warm, green fragrance of the mountain seeds, all rising together from the slow grinding into a warm, rich, spicy cloud that fills the small hut and warms the cold air and gladdens the heart. The deep, warm fragrance of the medicine in the making, which is itself, the old healer knows, a part of the cure, for the warm, rich fragrance gladdens the spirit and kindles the appetite and turns the mind toward warmth and comfort before ever a grain of the powder is swallowed. And the young herder watches from beside the fire in the soft firelight, and the soft, low grinding fills the hut, round and round and round, and the warm fragrance rises, and the slow morning turns gently toward midday, and there is a deep, quiet peace in the small stone room, the deep, quiet peace of slow, patient work done well. The old healer bent over his grinding stone, grinding the slow medicine of the high country, round and round and round, in the soft firelight of his hut, high on the cold mountain, in the bright noon of the 11th century, when the powder is ground fine and even at last, a warm, fragrant, pale brown powder, the old healer scrapes it carefully from the grinding stone into a small, clean bowl, and he divides it slowly, with his small horn spoon, into careful small measures, each measure a single dose of the cure, and he wraps each small measure carefully in a small twist of clean cloth, and ties it with a thread, and lays it aside until he has a small handful of the small wrapped doses, enough for the old father in the valley for a good many days, until the slow cure has had time to do its slow work and raise the fallen fire. But the powder alone is not the whole of the cure, for the powder must be taken. The old healer knows, in the right way, at the right time, with the right things, and he turns now to the young herder and tells him, slowly, carefully, how the medicine is to be used. The small twists of powder are to be given to the old father, one twist at a time, twice in the day, in the morning and at evening, and each twist is to be stirred into a small cup of warm water, or better still into a small cup of warm broth, and given to the old man warm after his food, that it may join with the food in the belly and kindle the warm fire of digestion that should cook it. And the old father is to be kept warm, warmly wrapped, in a warm dry place, away from the cold damp wind, and he is to be given warm and easily digested food, warm broths and warm gruels of well-cooked barley, a little at a time, and no cold food, and no raw food, and no heavy food that the weak fire cannot cook. And he is to be given warm drinks, warm water and warm tea, and never cold water, for the cold water, the old healer says, would only quench the low fire further. And he is to rest and to sleep warm, and to be patient, for the cure is a slow cure, and the fire rises slowly, and the old man must not look for a swift mending, but for a slow, steady warming, day by day, as the slow fire climbs slowly back to its proper strength. And the old healer tells the young herder all of this, slowly, carefully, making him say it back, that he may carry it truly down the long path to the valley, and remember it rightly at the tent. For the medicine, the old healer knows, is only half the cure, and the other half is the right using of it, and the warmth and the food, and the rest and the patience, and the slow, loving care of the household. And a healer who gives the powder, but not the careful telling of its use, has given only half his medicine. And then, the slow work of the medicine done, the small wrapped doses tied and ready. The old healer looks toward the smoke hole, where the light has climbed now to the high white light of the noon, and he sees that the morning is gone and the midday come, and that the young herder has a long path to walk back down to the valley before the dark, and that a man should not be sent off down a long cold path on an empty belly. And so he sets the medicine aside and turns to the fire and sets about the making of the midday meal, the simple shared meal of the high country, that he may feed the young herder before he goes, and feed himself, and rest a little in the quiet warmth of the noon. And the midday meal is the same simple meal as the morning, for the high country lives simply on the few good things it has, the warm butter tea and the soft toasted tsampa, the cha and the tsampa, that warm the cold body and feed the long day. The old healer sets the broad copper vessel over the fire again, and makes a fresh churning of the warm salt butter tea, the slow soft swish and thump of the churn filling the hut once more, and he pours out 2 wooden bowls of the warm rich red-brown tea, and into each he spoons a measure of the soft toasted barley flour, and he and the young herder sit together by the fire in the quiet warmth of the noon, and eat their simple meal slowly, in the way of the high country, working the warm tsampa dough in their bowls, eating it slowly with their fingers, drinking the warm rich tea in slow sips, and saying little, for the herding people are not great talkers, and there is a deep companionship in that country, in the sharing of a quiet meal in a warm hut that needs no words. And so they sit, the old healer and the young herder, in the quiet warmth of the midday, sharing the simple food and the quiet companionship, while outside the high white noon lies bright and still upon the great spreading mountains, and the prayer flags lift and settle in the slow noon breeze, and the great deep silence of the high country lies over everything, and it is a small quiet moment of deep human warmth, this shared meal in the high cold solitude, the old healer who lives alone and the young herder who has climbed the long path, sharing the warm tea and the warm barley and the warm fire, 2 human creatures in the great cold silence of the mountains, sharing for a little while the small warm circle of the fire before the young man must go back down to the cold valley, and the sick old father and the old healer must go back to his long solitude. And when the meal is done and the bowls are wiped, and the young herder has warmed himself well by the fire and rested his legs for the long path down, the old healer gives him the small bundle of the wrapped doses of the medicine, tied carefully in a clean cloth, and tells him once more, slowly, the careful using of it, and the young herder takes it and tucks it carefully inside his sheepskin against his chest, where it will be safe and warm on the long path down. And then the young herder rises and presses his palms together and bows slowly, deeply, in the way of the high country, and thanks the old healer with the slow few words of the herding people, which carry in their fewness a deep and real gratitude. And the old healer returns the bow slowly, kindly, and lays a hand for a moment upon the young man's shoulder, and speaks a slow few words of comfort and of hope, that the old father may mend, slowly, with the warmth and the care and the patience, and that the young man may not lose heart, but tend his father slowly and carefully and patiently, day by day, and trust the slow rising of the fire. And then the young herder turns, and ducks out through the low wooden door and sets off down the long stony path toward the valley. And the old healer stands in the doorway in the high white light of the noon and watches him go, the small dark figure growing slowly smaller down the long slope, until at last he passes out of sight around the shoulder of the mountain, carrying the small warm medicine down toward the sick old father in the cold valley below. And the old healer stands a moment longer in the doorway, looking out over the great spreading mountains in the bright noon, and then he turns slowly back into the quiet hut, and the great solitude settles over him once more, and the long quiet afternoon begins. But the old healer is not idle in the afternoon, for there is always work in the hermitage, the slow patient work of the keeping of the cupboard, and he turns now to that. He takes the herbs that he gathered upon the slope this morning, and he sets about the slow careful work of the drying and the storing of them, that they may keep their slow strength through the long seasons and be ready in the cupboard when they are needed. He spreads the fresh green leaves and stems out carefully upon wide bamboo screens, in a thin even layer, in the cool dry shadow of the hut, where the air moves but the sun does not reach, for the drying of the herbs, the old healer knows, must be slow and cool and shaded, that the slow strength may stay in the leaf and not be burned away by the fierce sun. He ties the longer stems into small loose bundles and hangs them from the rafters, heads downward, in the warm rising air above the fire, where they will dry slowly and evenly over the coming days. And he cleans the roots that he dug, scraping the cold earth from them, and slices them into thin, even slices with his small curved knife, and lays them out too, upon the screens to dry, that their slow strength may be kept for the cures of the coming season. And it is a slow, quiet, patient work, the keeping of the cupboard, and the old healer does it slowly, in the quiet warmth of the afternoon, his hands moving with the long-shore knowledge of the many years, spreading and tying and slicing and hanging, while the warm fragrance of the fresh herbs fills the hut, and the high white noon turns slowly toward the long gold light of the afternoon. And there is a deep contentment in it, the deep quiet contentment of the slow keeping of the cupboard against the coming seasons, the slow squirrel work of the laying up of the slow medicine of the mountain, that the cupboard may be full when the sickness comes, and the cure ready to hand. But the afternoon is not finished with us yet, and the old healer's day is not done. For the high country is wide, and the people are scattered, and the sickness does not keep to any 1 hour. And as the old healer works at his cupboard in the quiet warmth of the afternoon, far below on the long stony path, another small party has begun, slowly, to climb toward the hermitage. The old healer sees them when he steps out to fetch a screen from the sun, a small, slow party climbing the long path, 3 or 4 figures, moving slowly. And he watches them a moment with his slow patient eye, and sees that they are carrying something between them, slung in a blanket between 2 stout poles, a kind of litter, and that they are climbing slowly and carefully, with the slow care of people carrying a heavy and a precious burden. And the old healer knows, in the way that he has come to know such things, that they are carrying a sick one up the long path to his door, one too sick or too weak to climb the path on her own feet, and that the second patient of his day is being carried slowly up toward him through the long gold light of the afternoon. And so the old healer sets aside his cupboard work and makes ready to receive them, building up the fire a little against the coming of the cold afternoon, and setting the copper vessel of water to warm, and clearing a clean space upon the low wooden bed where the sick one may be laid. And when at last the small slow party comes to the door, weary and breathing hard from the long climb, the old healer steps out to meet them and helps them slowly, carefully, to bring their burden in through the low door and to lay it down upon the bed. And it is an old woman, an old herding woman of the high valleys, very old and very frail, her face deeply lined and her hands thin and trembling, who lies in the blanket litter, wrapped warmly against the cold, her eyes closed, her breathing shallow and quick. Her family have carried her up the long path, 2 strong sons and a daughter, for she has been failing these many weeks, growing slowly weaker and thinner and more weary. A slow wasting weakness with no clear cause, a slow failing of the strength and the warmth and the life, the slow trouble of the very old. And they have brought her to the old healer in the high hermitage as their last hope, that he might rid her trouble and ease it if it can be eased, and bring her some comfort in her slow failing, if nothing more. And the old healer receives them gently and settles the old woman comfortably upon the bed and warms the cold hut and gives the weary family warm bowls of buttered tea to ease their long climb. And then he sets about, slowly, patiently, gently, the reading of the old woman's trouble. He takes her thin trembling wrist in his old hands and lays his 3 fingers upon it and grows still and reads her pulse, slowly, long, with the deep patient attention of his trade, and he finds it, as he expected, a weak and empty and floating and halting pulse, a pulse with little strength in it, a pulse in which the cold high wind, the lung, has risen up over a body grown weak and thin and empty with the long years, a body whose deep substance, whose cool steady earth, has worn slowly away with the long age, leaving the high wind to blow too freely through the thin and empty body, scattering its little remaining warmth, troubling its sleep, trembling its hands, and slowly carrying its life away upon the wind. For this is the trouble of the very old. The old healer knows, in the wisdom of his tradition, the slow rising of the wind humor, the loom, in the body that has grown thin and empty and worn with the long years. For the phlegm, the beacon, the cool steady earth and substance of the body, is the humor of youth and of growth and of fullness, and it wanes slowly with the long years, as the body grows thin and dry and worn, and as it wanes, the wind, the loom, the humor of age and of dryness and of motion, rises up to fill the empty space, until in the very old the wind blows too freely through the thin worn body, and brings the troubles of age, the trembling and the sleeplessness, and the wandering thought and the cold, and the slow failing of the warmth and the strength. And it is a trouble that cannot be wholly cured, for it is the slow turning of the great wheel of the life itself, the slow ebbing of the body toward its long rest, and the old healer knows this, and does not pretend otherwise, neither to himself nor to the weary family. But it can be eased. The wind can be settled and quieted and warmed and grounded, and the slow failing can be gentled, and the old woman can be given comfort and warmth and ease and a little more strength and a little more peace in the slow evening of her long life. And so the old healer turns to the cures that settle and warm and ground the risen wind, and chief among them For the deep, cold settling of the high wind in the thin old body is the cure that the old healing prized above almost all others for the troubles of the wind and the cold, the ancient cure of the burning of the healing points, the cure that the old healers called me, Tisa, which we might say as moxibustion, the slow, gentle burning of a small cone of dried herb upon certain points of the body, to drive the deep warmth in through the skin and settle the risen wind, and warm the cold, deep places, and kindle the failing fire of the life. For the body, the old healing taught, has upon its surface certain special points, certain places where the deep inner currents of the body rise, close to the skin, and may be reached and worked upon from without, certain gateways into the deep workings of the body and the wise healer. Knowing these points, and knowing which point governs which trouble, may work upon the deep body from without, through these small gateways in the skin, by the pressing of them, or the needling of them, or, most powerfully of all, by the gentle burning of the healing herb upon them. The Misa, the fire cure, which drives a deep, slow, steady warmth in through the gateway, down into the deep, cold places of the body, where no warm drink and no warm fire can ever reach. And so the old healer prepares the Misa, the fire cure, slowly, carefully, in the soft gold light of the afternoon. He takes from a small clay jar upon his shelf a small store of the dried herb that is used for the burning, the soft grey down of the dried mountain wormwood, the same bitter aromatic herb that he gathered upon the slopes, dried and rubbed and worked between the hands until the tough leaf has fallen away, and only the soft grey down remains, a soft grey wool of dried herb that takes the fire slowly and holds it long, and burns not with a flame, but with a slow, deep glowing heat, a soft, steady glowing warmth, which is just what the fire cure asks for. And he takes a small pinch of the soft grey down, and he rolls it slowly between his old finger and thumb into a small firm cone, no larger than a grain of barley, a small firm cone of the dried herb, and he makes several of them, small firm cones of the grey down, and sets them ready upon a clean cloth. And then he turns to the old woman upon the bed and uncovers, gently, the places upon her body where the healing points lie, the points that govern the troubles of the wind and the cold, and he finds them slowly with his patient fingers, pressing and searching along the body, for the points are found not by the eye but by the finger, by a small particular feel in the flesh, a small hollow, a small tenderness that the trained finger learns to seek out, and he marks each point that he finds with a small touch, and then, gently, slowly, he sets about the burning. He takes a small cun of the grey down, and he sets it upright upon the first healing point, upon the skin of the old woman, and he takes a small glowing ember from the fire upon the end of a thin reed, and he touches it gently to the top of the small cone, and the cone catches slowly and begins to glow a small deep red glow at its tip, and to burn slowly downward from the top toward the skin, with a thin small thread of fragrant grey smoke rising up from it, and a slow deep glowing warmth spreading down from it into the skin and the flesh and the deep places beneath. And the old healer watches it burn, slowly, with the deep patient attention of his trade, watching the small red glow creep slowly down the small cone toward the skin. And as the glowing heat reaches the skin, and the old woman feels the slow deep warmth growing, the old healer watches her face and asks her, gently, what she feels. and at the moment when the warmth has grown to its full and is just on the point of becoming too much, just before it would burn or hurt, the old healer lifts the small glowing cone away, swiftly and surely, with a small pinch of his practiced fingers, leaving upon the skin only a small spot of deep warmth, a small gateway of warmth opened into the deep body, through which the slow, deep healing warmth has passed down into the cold, deep places below. And he does this slowly, patiently, point by point, along the body of the old woman, the small cones of grey down, the small embers, the slow glowing burning, the slow deep warmth driven in through the small gateways of the skin, point by point, place by place, the soft grey smoke rising in thin threads, the warm aromatic fragrance of the burning wormwood filling the hut, and at each point the slow deep warmth driven down into the cold deep places of the thin old body to settle the risen wind and warm the cold deep cold and kindle the failing fire of the life. And the old woman, who was tense and trembling and frightened when she was carried in, grows slowly calmer and quieter and more still under the slow warm working of the cure, her breathing slowing and deepening, the trembling of her hands slowly stilling, a slow deep warmth and ease spreading slowly through her thin old body, until at last she lies quiet and easy and warm upon the bed, her eyes closed, her face calm. The deep settling warmth of the fire cure spread slowly through her. The risen wind settled and quieted and warmed and grounded at last, like a wild wind settling at evening into a calm, still night. And it is a strange and ancient and beautiful thing. The fire cure, the Misa, one of the oldest of all the cures of the old healing, older, perhaps, than the herbs and the decoctions, going back, it may be, to the very first healers of the high cold country, who learned, in some forgotten age, that the slow deep warmth of the burning herb, driven in through the right point of the body, could reach down into the deep cold places where no other warmth could reach, and settle the risen wind and warm the cold cold, and kindle the failing fire, and bring a slow deep ease to the troubled body. And the old healer practices it now, slowly, gently, in the soft gold light of the afternoon, high on the cold mountain, as it was practiced by the healers of that country for long ages before him, and as it would be practiced for long ages after, the slow burning of the small grey cone, the slow driving in of the deep warmth, the slow settling of the wind. But the fire cure is not the only of the external cures of the old healing, and while the old woman rests, easy and warm, beneath the slow working of the Misa, let us speak, gently, of the others, that we may understand the whole reach of the old healer's art. For the old healing held that there were two great kinds of cure, the gentle cures and the strong cures, and that the healer should always begin with the gentlest, and reach for the stronger only slowly, and only when the gentler had failed. And the gentlest cures of all were the cures that were not medicines at all, but only the right ordering of the life, the right food, and the right way of living, which the old healing held to be the first and the best of all medicines, the medicines that, rightly used, would keep the body in its balance and the sickness from ever taking hold. And so the old healer, when the fire cure is done, turns to the family of the old woman and tells them, slowly, carefully, how she is to be tended, how she is to be fed, how she is to live in the slow evening of her years, that the risen wind may be kept settled, and the cold kept warmed, and the slow failing gentled. She is to be kept warm, always warm, warmly wrapped by a warm fire, away from the cold wind and the cold damp. For the cold is the great enemy of the risen wind. She is to be fed warm and nourishing and easily digested food, warm rich broths, warm gruels, a little warm butter, a little warm meat broth, the warm rich grounding foods that feed the thin old body and settle the risen wind. She is to be given warm oily things for the oil and the fat. The old healing taught, ground and settle the dry light wind as nothing else can. And a thin old body troubled by the wind is helped, above all, by the warm rich grounding foods and the warm gentle oiling of the skin. She is to sleep warm and rest much, and be kept from all hurry and all fright and all trouble of the heart, for the wind is troubled, above all, by hurry and fright and grief, and a thin old body troubled by the wind must be kept above all, in warmth and calm and quiet and peace. And the old healer tells the family all of this, slowly, carefully, kindly, making the sons and the daughter understand that the tending of the old mother, the warm food and the warm fire and the warm calm care is itself the greater part of the cure, greater than any medicine, and that they themselves, by their slow loving care, are the true healers of their mother now, in the slow evening of her years. And he gives them too a small store of a gentle warming medicine, a mild warming compound of the grounding settling herbs, the warm aromatic seeds and the warm sweet roots, and a little of the warm rich nutmeg that settles the wind and quiets the heart, to be given to the old woman, a little at a time, in warm milk or warm broth, to settle the risen wind and warm the cold body and bring her quiet sleep. And he speaks to them, too, of the deeper truth, gently, that the slow failing of the very old cannot be wholly turned back, that the great wheel turns, and that the slow ebbing of the old body toward its long rest is not a sickness to be conquered, but a slow turning to be accompanied with warmth, and with love, and with patience, and with peace, and that the best that the medicine can do, and the best that the loving family can do, is to make the slow evening warm, and easy, and gentle, and full of peace. And of the strong cures, the cures beyond the food, and the way of living, and the herbs, and the fire cure, the old healer does not speak today, for the old woman does not need them, but they are there. In the deep reach of his tradition, the strong cures for the strong troubles, the letting of a little blood from certain vessels for the cooling of the bile gone too hot, and the clearing of the blood gone too thick, the gentle pressing and the warm oiling and the slow working of the troubled places, and, rarest and most dreaded of all, the cure of the golden needle. The slow, careful working of a fine needle into certain deep points of the body for certain deep and stubborn troubles, a cure of great power and great care, used only by the most skilled of healers, and only for the gravest of troubles, and only when all the gentler cures had failed. And there are the medicines of the great compounds, too, the precious pills of many herbs and many minerals, the famous jewel pills of the old tradition, compounded slowly over many days from many precious things, the rare herbs and the cleansed minerals, and the precious stones ground fine, blessed with the slow prayers of the healer monks, rolled into small dark precious pills, and kept for the gravest troubles and the deepest healing, the rare and precious crown of the whole great cupboard of the old healing. But all of these are for another day and another trouble, and the old healer sets them aside. For the old woman upon the bed needs only the slow warmth and the slow settling and the slow gentle care. And these he has given her, and now she rests easy and warm and quiet. The risen wind settled at last, and it is time for her to be carried home, down the long path, to her warm fire and her warm bed and her warm loving family, while the afternoon light is still good. And so the family gathers the old woman up again, gently, carefully, lifting her warm and easy and quiet into the blanket litter between the two stout poles, and they wrap her warmly against the coming cold of the evening. And they press their palms together and bow slowly, deeply to the old healer and thank him with the slow few words of the high country, which carry a deep and real gratitude. And the old healer returns their bow and lays a hand for a moment upon the old woman's brow and speaks a slow few words of comfort over her, a slow soft blessing for the long journey home and the slow evening of her years. And then the family lifts the litter and ducks out through the low door and sets off, slowly, carefully, down the long path toward the valley, carrying the old mother home through the long gold light of the late afternoon. And the old healer stands in the doorway and watches them go, the small, slow, careful party winding slowly down the long slope, the litter swaying gently between the poles, until at last they pass out of sight around the shoulder of the mountain, carrying the old woman down toward her warm fire and her warm bed and the slow, gentle evening of her long life. And the old healer stands a while longer in the doorway, looking out over the great spreading mountains, and the great solitude settles over him once more, the deep familiar solitude of the high hermitage, and the long quiet of the evening begins, for the day is turning now toward its end. The sun has dropped low in the west, and the light has changed from the hard white light of the noon to the long warm gold light of the late afternoon, a soft rich amber gold that lies long across the slopes and gilds the grey rocks and the short brown grass and turns the whole great landscape warm and golden and soft. And as the old healer stands in his doorway, the light changes again, slowly, deepening from gold toward amber toward rose, and the great white snow peaks to the east, that have stood all day dazzling white against the blue, begin, slowly, to catch the warm low light of the setting sun, and to turn, slowly, from white to gold to a deep warm rose. A deep glowing rose, gold light upon the high snows, the famous evening light of the high mountains, when the low sun, already set in the valleys, still reaches the high peaks, and sets them glowing, for a long slow while, with a deep warm rose, gold fire against the deepening blue of the evening sky. And the old healer stands in his doorway, in the deepening cool of the evening, and watches the slow turning of the light upon the high peaks, the slow glowing of the rose, gold fire upon the snows, as he has watched it 10,000 evenings of his long life. And it never grows old, and it never fails to fill him with a slow deep wonder and a slow deep peace, the slow turning of the great light upon the great mountains at the close of the day, the slow daily glory of the high country, freely given, asking nothing, the great slow beauty of the world turning quietly toward its rest. And he watches it until the last of the rose, gold light fades slowly from the highest peak, and the snows turn slowly grey, and then blue, and then a deep cold violet in the gathering dusk, and the first cold star pricks out in the deepening east, and the long cold mountain evening comes slowly down upon the world. And then, slowly, The old healer turns back into the hut, for the evening is coming and the cold is deepening, and there is the evening to be tended, the small slow tasks of the close of the day. He builds up the fire a little, against the coming cold of the night, laying on the slow dung fuel that burns long and steady. And the small warm circle of the firelight grows and steadies in the dim hut. He lights his butter lamp again, the small steady gold flame against the gathering dark, and sets it in its place, and the soft yellow light spreads its small warm pool upon the stone wall, and he sets the broad copper vessel of water over the fire once more to warm for the evening meal, the last simple meal of the day. And the evening meal, like the morning and the midday, is the simple food of the high country, the warm butter tea and the soft toasted tsampa, though for the evening the old healer makes a little more of it, and adds to it a little more, for the evening meal is the meal that must last him through the long cold night. He churns a fresh churning of the warm salt butter tea, the slow soft swish and thump of the churn filling the dim hut once more, and he makes his bowl of warm tsampa dough, working the soft toasted barley flour into the warm rich tea with his fingers, and to it, this evening, he adds a little more, a small handful of the dried sweet cheese of the high country. The small hard nuggets of dried cheese that the herding people make from the milk of their animals and dry hard for the long winter, and a few of the small dried sweet berries, the sea buckthorn, and the small dried apricots that come up over the trade roads, a small evening richness, a small evening sweetness, to feed the long cold night and gladden the close of the long day. And the old healer sits by his fire in the small warm circle of the firelight and the lamplight in the deepening cold and dark of the mountain evening, and eats his simple evening meal slowly, in no hurry at all, savouring the warm rich tea and the warm sweet barley and the small dried sweetness of the cheese and the berries, while outside the great cold dark comes slowly down upon the mountains, and the first stars prick out, one by one, cold and bright and hard, in the deep clear sky, and the great deep silence of the mountain night settles slowly over the world. And when the meal is done, and the bowl is wiped and set upon its shelf, the old healer turns to the last small tasks of the day, the slow careful putting of the hut to rights against the night. He clears away the things of the day, the herbs and the screens and the grinding stone, and sets them in their places. He fills the 7 small brass bowls upon the altar with fresh clear water for the night, the simple pure offering, and trims the small altar lamp and bows slowly 3 times before the calm bronze face of the holy being of healing, and says, softly, the prayers of the evening. The slow quiet prayers of thanks for the day that is past, the day's work done, the 2 patients tended, the cupboard kept, the slow prayers that gather up the day and offer it, slowly, to the great compassion, and lay it down and let it go. And he prays too, in his slow quiet way, for the 2 patients of the day, for the old father in the cold valley with the small warm medicine, that the fire may rise in him, and for the old woman carried home in the litter, that the wind may stay settled, and the evening of her years be warm and easy and full of peace. And then, last of all, the old healer turns to the fire, to the slow careful banking of it for the night, which is, as it was in the morning, one of the small careful arts of the high country, the keeping alive of the precious fire through the long cold night. he rakes the live coals together into a small, close heap in the center of the hearth, and he covers them carefully with a thick blanket of fine grey ash, smothering them slowly, that they may burn low and slow and never quite die through the long hours of the night. The small sleeping warmth of the fire kept alive beneath the ash, ready to be breathed back to life in the cold of the coming morning. And the small bright flames sink slowly down beneath the ash, and the hut grows slowly dimmer, until only the soft gold light of the single butter lamp remains. The small steady flame against the great dark, the small warm light in the great cold silence of the mountain night. And the old healer makes ready for his rest. He banks the fire and trims the lamp and draws the heavy door closed against the night, and wraps himself in his heavy wool robe and his worn sheepskin, and lies down slowly, with the slow care of the old, upon his low wooden bed against the wall, in the small soft pool of the lamplight, and draws the warm sheepskin close around him, and settles himself for the long quiet night. And he lies there, warm and easy and content, in the small warm pool of the lamplight, in the great cold dark of the mountain night, and lets the slow weariness of the long good day settle over him, the deep good weariness of slow patient work done well, and breathes slowly, and lets the day fall slowly away. But the old healer does not fall at once to sleep, for an old man's sleep does not come at once, and the night is young yet, and there is a slow quiet hour in the evening that the old healer keeps. Always, before sleep, a slow quiet hour of stillness, in the small warm pool of the lamplight, before the day is wholly let go. And so he lies awake for a while, warm and easy beneath his sheepskin, in the small soft gold of the lamplight, and lets his mind grow slowly still, and listens to the great silence of the mountain night. And the great silence of the mountain night is even deeper than the silence of the dawn. For now the day's small sounds are gone, the day's small business done, and there is nothing left but the great deep silence itself, the silence of the high stone, and the long snow, and the deep cold air, the silence that lies over the high country in the long winter nights, so deep and so wide and so complete that it is almost a thing you can feel, a great soft weight upon the world, a great deep stillness that seems to reach up from the silent stone and down from the silent stars, and to hold the whole world for the long hours of the night in a deep and dreamless peace. The old healer lies in it and listens to it, and lets it settle over him like a soft heavy snow, and it brings him, as it has brought him 10,000 nights of his long life, a slow deep peace, a slow deep letting go, the slow dissolving of the small self into the great silence, which is, perhaps, the deepest medicine of all, the medicine that the high lonely places give freely to those who can be still enough to receive it. And now and then, in the great silence, there comes a small far sound, and the silence makes it precious, the way the silence always makes the small sounds precious. The thin run of the spring outside, still running, even now, even in the cold of the night, the small silver thread of water running away down the slope over the cold stones, the one small voice that never quite falls silent in the high country, the soft lift and settle of the old prayer flags in the slow breath of the night wind, the soft small flutter of the worn cloth, lifting and settling, sending its slow soft prayers out upon the wind into the great dark, the small far cry of a night creature, a high bird or a mountain fox, Far off across the dark slopes, a small lonely cry in the great silence, quickly gone, leaving the silence deeper than before. And beneath all of them, always, the great deep silence itself, holding everything, the long slow silence of the high cold night. And after a while the old healer rises slowly for one last small thing that he does on the clear nights before he sleeps. He rises and wraps his robe close and crosses to the low door and opens it softly and steps out, just for a moment, into the great cold dark of the mountain night, to look up at the stars. For the stars of the high country, on a clear winter night, are a thing of such great and terrible beauty, that the old healer cannot let a clear night pass without stepping out, just for a moment, to look up at them, and to feel, once more, the great cold wonder of them. And he steps out, and looks up, and there they are, the stars of the high country, blazing down out of the deep black sky in their countless thousands, far brighter and far harder, and far more numerous than the stars of any low country, for the air of the high mountains is so thin and so clear and so dry that nothing dims them, and they blaze down in their full cold glory, layer upon layer of them, the bright near stars and the dim far stars, and the great soft glowing river of the countless distant stars that runs in a broad pale band across the whole black sky, the great river of the heavens, so bright on a clear night in the high country that it casts a faint soft shadow upon the snow. And the old healer stands beneath them, a small dark figure on the great dark slope, beneath the great blazing wheel of the winter stars, and feels, as he feels every clear night, the great cold smallness of himself beneath that vast and blazing sky, and the strange deep peace of that smallness, the peace of being a very small thing in a very great and very beautiful and very silent world. And he stands there a while, looking up, his breath rising in a thin pale cloud against the stars, the cold deepening slowly into his bones. The great silence and the great blaze of the stars, and the great cold dark of the mountain night all around him, and he feels, as he has felt 1,000 clear nights of his long life, the great slow turning of the wheel of the heavens, the slow turning of the stars across the sky through the long hours of the night, the same slow turning that the old astronomers of every land have watched since the beginning of the world, the slow patient turning of the great cold wheel. And it fills him, as it always fills him, with a slow deep peace, the peace of the great slow turning, in which the small troubles of the small day are very small indeed, and the great slow turning goes on, as it always has, and always will. Long after the small day is forgotten, and the small self is gone. And then the cold grows too deep, and the old healer turns slowly, and steps back into the warm, dim hut, and draws the door closed against the night, and the small warm circle of the lamplight gathers him in again, the small warm light in the great cold dark, and he lies down once more upon his low wooden bed, and draws the warm sheepskin close, and settles himself at last for sleep. And as he lies there, warm and easy in the small gold lamplight, in the great silence of the mountain night, the slow thoughts of the long day move slowly through his quieting mind, the slow gathering up of the day before sleep, and there is a deep contentment in them, the deep quiet contentment of a good day's work done well. He thinks of the young herder, climbing slowly down the long path to the cold valley, carrying the small warm medicine to the sick old father, and he sends a slow quiet wish after him through the dark, that the medicine may warm the old man's cold belly and raise his fallen fire and bring him slowly back to his warmth and his strength. He thinks of the old woman, carried home in the swaying litter through the long gold light of the evening, to her warm fire and her warm bed and her warm loving family, and he sends a slow quiet wish after her, too, that the wind may stay settled and the slow evening of her years be warm and easy and full of peace. And he thinks, slowly, with the deep quiet contentment of the old, of his own long life. The long good life of the healer, the slow patient years of the gathering, and the grinding, and the brewing, and the burning. The slow patient years of the easing of the suffering of the scattered people of the high country. And he is content, deeply content, with the long slow life he has lived, and the long slow work he has done, and he asks for nothing more. For this, he thinks slowly, in his quieting mind, is what a life is in the end. Not the great events that the histories remember, not the battles and the kings, but the slow patient work of the ordinary days, one after another, the slow tending of the fire, and the slow gathering of the herbs, and the slow easing of the suffering of the people who come up the long path, the slow keeping of the small lamp of the old knowledge burning in the great dark, the slow turning of the small wheel of the small good life, day after day after day, until the days run out. And it is enough. It is more than enough. It is a whole life, a good life, a life of slow patient kindness in a hard cold world, and the old healer lying warm and easy in the small gold lamplight, in the great silence of the mountain night, is deeply and quietly content with it, and asks for nothing more. And slowly, slowly, as the slow contented thoughts move through his quieting mind, the old healer's breathing grows slower and deeper and easier, and the slow weariness of the long good day settles over him like a warm, soft blanket, and his thoughts grow slower and softer and farther apart, drifting slowly into the great silence, and his eyes, already closed, grow heavier, and the small gold lamplight grows dim and far, and the great silence of the mountain night rises up slowly around him like a deep soft tide, and the old healer drifts slowly, gently, down into the deep, warm, dreamless sleep of the very tired and the very content, the deep good sleep of a good day's work done well, in the small, warm pool of the lamplight, in the great cold silence of the mountain night, and in the deep middle of the night, as old men do, the old healer half wakes for a little while in the great dark, and lies quietly, neither asleep nor truly awake, in the small dim glow of the low burning lamp, and his slow drifting thoughts move gently back across the long years, across the long slow procession of all the many people who have climbed the long path to his door in all the long seasons of all the long years of his quiet life. For many have come over the years up the long stony path to the small stone hut, many and many, in all their many troubles, and the old healer has tended them all, slowly, patiently, kindly, as he tended the two who came today. He thinks of them now, in the drifting half-waking of the deep night, the long slow procession of them, the faces and the troubles, the herders and the pilgrims, and the traders and the children, all the scattered suffering people of the high country, who have found their slow way to his door over the long years. He thinks of the young mothers who climbed the path with their fevered children wrapped against their breasts, and the cool herbs he ground for the burning fevers, and the slow relief in their eyes when the fever broke at last. He thinks of the strong young herders who came limping up the path with the broken bones and the deep wounds of the hard mountain life, and the slow careful setting of the bones, and the slow careful binding of the wounds, and the slow patient mending over the long weeks. He thinks of the old ones, like the old woman of today, who came in the slow failing of their years, for whom there was no cure but only the slow gentle easing, the warmth and the comfort and the peace. And he thinks of how many of them he has eased, slowly, gently, toward their long rest over the long years. And he thinks, too, in the slow honesty of the deep night, of the ones he could not help, for there have been those, too, over the long years, the troubles too deep and too far gone for any cure, the ones who climbed the path too late, or whose sickness was beyond the reach of any herb, or any fire cure, or any prayer, and who he could only sit beside, and comfort, and ease, and accompany, gently, to the edge of the great silence, and then let go. For the old healer learned, long ago, in the slow hard school of his long years, that the healer cannot save everyone, that the great wheel turns, and that there is a time for every living thing to turn slowly with it toward its long rest, and that the deepest work of the healer is not always the curing, but sometimes only the comforting, the slow gentle accompanying of the suffering soul to the edge of the great silence with warmth, and with kindness, and with peace. And he has made his slow peace with this, over the long years, the slow hard peace of the old healer, who has seen much suffering and much dying, and who has learned to carry it gently, without bitterness, with a slow deep tenderness for all the suffering living things of the world, and a slow deep trust in the great slow turning of the wheel. And he thinks, in the drifting half-waking of the deep night, of his own old teacher, the old physician monk of the southern monastery, who taught him all of this so many long years ago, the slow patient old man who laid the boy's fingers upon the sick man's wrist and said, "Feel again." The slow patient old man who taught him the herbs and the pulses and the cures, and taught him, too, the deeper things, the patience, the kindness, the slow stillness of the mind, the deep tenderness for the suffering of the world, the slow trust in the great turning of the wheel. The old teacher has been gone now for many long years, gone into the great silence, turned slowly with the wheel toward his own long rest. And yet he is here, too, in the small stone hut on the great dark mountain, for he lives on in the slow patient hands, and the slow still mind, and the slow deep kindness of the old healer he taught, the slow lamp of the knowledge passed faithfully on, from the old teacher to the young student, across the long years, the way it has been passed, from teacher to student, down the long generations. Since the first far beginnings of the old healing, the slow faithful passing on of the long patient kindness, hand to hand, down the long slow years. And the old healer thinks, too, with a slow quiet wondering, of who will come after him, when his own season comes at last, and he turns slowly with the wheel toward his own long rest. For he is old now, and he lives alone, and he has no student of his own, no young one to whom he might pass the slow lamp of his knowledge, and he wonders, sometimes, in the slow honesty of the deep night, what will become of the small lamp when he is gone, whether some young seeker will find his way at last to the small stone hut on the great mountain, and take up the slow patient work, and keep the small lamp burning, or whether the small lamp will go slowly dark at last, when the old healer turns with the wheel, and the small stone hut will stand empty on the great mountain, and the scattered people of the high country will have to climb a longer path to some farther healer in their troubles. He does not know. It is not for him to know. He has kept the small lamp faithfully all the long years of his life, and what becomes of it after him is in the hands of the great slow turning, and he has made his slow peace with that too, and he does not trouble himself over it in the deep quiet of the night, but only sends a slow quiet wish out into the great dark, that the small lamp of the long patient kindness may find its way somehow down the long years, from hand to faithful hand, and never go wholly dark in the great cold world. And then the slow drifting thoughts grow slower and softer and farther apart, and the small dim glow of the low lamp grows dimmer and farther, and the great silence rises up again around the old healer like a deep soft tide, and he drifts slowly, gently, back down from his half-waking into the deep, warm, dreamless sleep, the deep, good sleep of the long, good life, the deep, quiet rest of the old healer, sleeping his slow, deep sleep in the small gold lamplight, in the great silence of the mountain night, while the great wheel turns slowly on, and the small lamp burns low, and the long night turns slowly toward the distant dawn. And while the old healer sleeps his slow, deep sleep in the small gold lamplight, in the great silence of the mountain night, let us linger a while longer in the quiet hut, for the night is long, and there is no hurry, and there are a few more slow, quiet things worth saying, gently, in the dark, before we let the long day go. For we have followed the old healer through one single day, one ordinary day, from the dark cold morning to the deep quiet night, and we have seen the small slow shape of it, the rising and the prayers and the gathering and the tending and the resting. But the one day is only one small turning of a much larger wheel, the great slow wheel of the seasons, and the old healer's life turns slowly with that great wheel through the long, slow round of the year, and it is worth our while to think gently for a moment of how the old healer's days change with the turning of the seasons, before we let the long night carry us down to sleep. For the day we have followed was a day of the late winter, a cold day, a day of the risen phlegm and the cold belly and the settled wind, and the old healer's work in the late winter is a work of warming, of the kindling of the fallen fires and the driving out of the cold heavy phlegm, the warming cures and the warming foods and the warm fire cure of the meetasa. But the seasons turn, and the work turns with them. In the slow coming of the spring, when the snows begin to melt upon the high slopes, and the first small green shoots push up through the cold earth, the old healer's work changes. For the spring is the season of the phlegm gone watery and loose, the season of the running noses, and the heavy heads, and the slow damp coughs, as the cold of the winter melts and runs in the body as it melts and runs upon the slopes, and the old healer turns to the cures that clear and dry and lighten, the bitter herbs and the pungent herbs that clear the damp and dry the loose phlegm, and lighten the heavy body for the coming of the warm, bright summer. And in the summer, the short, bright summer of the high country, when the high meadows blaze with the small, bright flowers, and the herbs are at their full strength, and the air is warm and soft, the old healer's work changes again, For the summer is the season of his great gathering, the season when he climbs the high slopes day after day, in the long bright mornings, and gathers the slow medicine of the mountain at its full strength, the leaves at their fullness and the flowers at their opening, building up the great store of the cupboard against the long winter to come. And the summer is the season too of the troubles of the heat, the fevers and the inflammations, and the troubles of the bile gone too hot in the warm, bright sun. And the old healer turns to the cooling cures, the bitter cooling roots, the mountain rhubarb and the blue gentian, the cool cleansing herbs that cool the risen bile and clear the heat from the blood and the liver, and the cool light foods of the warm season. And in the autumn, the slow golden autumn of the high country, when the meadows fade from green to gold, and the first frosts whiten the high slopes, and the herders bring their flocks down from the high pastures toward the sheltered valleys, the old healer's work changes once more, for the autumn is the season of the rising wind, the loom, the dry cold wind of the turning year, the season of the dry coughs and the sleepless nights and the troubled hearts, and the old healer turns to the cures that settle and ground and warm and oil the rising wind, the warm rich grounding foods, the warm oils, the settling herbs, the gentle warmth, preparing the body for the long hard cold of the coming winter. And the autumn is the season too of the digging of the roots, for the roots are dug in the autumn, when the strength of the plant has gone down out of the leaf and the flower and back into the root for the long winter sleep. And the old healer spends the long golden autumn days digging the medicine roots from the cold earth, the warm ginger, like roots and the cool cleansing roots, and washing them and slicing them and drying them and laying them up in the cupboard against the long winter. And so the great wheel turns, season after season, year after year, and the old healer turns slowly with it, his work changing with the turning of the seasons, the warming of the winter and the clearing of the spring and the cooling of the summer and the grounding of the autumn, the slow round of the year, the slow round of the cures, the slow round of the gathering and the grinding and the brewing and the tending, the great slow patient round of the life of the healer, turning slowly year after year, with the great slow turning of the seasons and the stars. And there is a deep wisdom in it, in this slow turning of the work with the turning of the seasons, the deep wisdom of the old healing, which held that the body itself turns with the seasons, that the humours rise and fall with the turning of the year, the phlegm in the cold damp seasons, and the bile in the warm bright seasons, and the wind in the dry cold seasons, and that the wise healer must read not only the body, but the season, and the place, and the age, and the whole slow turning of the great wheel, and tend the body always in tune with the great turning, warming it in the cold seasons and cooling it in the warm, grounding it in the dry seasons and lightening it in the damp, keeping it always, slowly, patiently, in tune with the great slow turning of the world. For the body, the old healing taught, is not separate from the world, but a small part of the world, a small turning wheel within the great turning wheel. And the health of the body is the keeping of the small wheel in tune with the great, and the work of the healer is the slow patient keeping of that tune, season after season, year after year, through the whole long slow round of the life. And the old healer has kept that tune slowly, patiently, for the whole long round of his long life, through the long slow seasons and the long slow years. The warming and the clearing, and the cooling and the grounding, the gathering and the grinding, and the brewing and the tending, the slow patient keeping of the small wheel in tune with the great. And it has been a good life, a deep and quiet and good life, a life lived slowly and attentively and in tune with the great slow turning of the world. And the old healer, sleeping now his slow deep sleep in the small gold lamplight, is the slow ripe fruit of that long good life, an old man deeply at peace, deeply in tune with the great slow turning, ready, when his own season comes, to turn slowly and gently with it toward his own long rest. And the night turns slowly on around the sleeping healer, the great slow wheel of the winter stars turning slowly across the black sky above the smoke hole, the great river of the heavens wheeling slowly over the silent snows, the long deep hours of the mountain night turning slowly toward the distant dawn. The small fire sleeps beneath its blanket of ash, the small embers glowing slow and deep and red, keeping their small sleeping warmth against the cold. The small butter lamp burns low and steady and gold, the small steady flame against the great dark, growing slowly smaller as the night wears on and the butter slowly burns away. The thin run of the spring runs on outside, the one small voice in the great silence. The prayer flags lift and settle in the slow breath of the night wind, sending their slow soft prayers out into the great dark, and the great deep silence of the mountain night lies over everything, deep and wide and whole, holding the small hut and the sleeping healer, and the small glowing fire and the small gold lamp, holding the great mountains and the silent snows and the blazing stars, holding the whole great cold beautiful silent world in the deep dark peace of the long winter night. And so we come slowly, gently, to the close of our long quiet day, and to the close of our long quiet night, for there is nothing more to do now, and nothing more to say, but only to sit a little while longer in the great silence, beside the sleeping healer in the small gold lamplight, and then, slowly, to let it all go. Let us look, one last time, at the small stone hut on the great dark mountain. There it stands, high on the cold shoulder of the world, a small low square of grey stone, with its flat roof of timber and earth, and its thin line of worn prayer flags lifting and settling in the slow night wind, and its low door drawn closed against the cold, and inside it, in the deep dark, the small warm circle of the firelight and the lamplight, the small warm heart of warmth and life, in all that great cold silent dark. And inside, upon the low wooden bed against the wall, wrapped in his heavy wool and his worn sheepskin, the old healer sleeps his slow deep sleep, his old face calm and content in the soft gold lamplight, his breathing slow and deep and easy, the deep good sleep of a good day's work done well. And the single butter lamp burns on beside him, the small steady gold flame against the great dark, just as it burned in the dark hour before the dawn when we first came to this small hut, so many slow hours ago. It is the same small flame, the same small bowl of beaten brass, the same thin twist of cotton wick, the same small steady gold flame standing up bright and warm in the great cold dark. It has burned all through the long day, and it will burn on now through the long night, the small steady faithful flame, the small warm light that the old healer keeps always burning in the great dark, the small lamp of warmth and life, and the old slow knowledge the small lamp of the long patient kindness, burning on quietly, faithfully, hour after hour, through the long cold night, high on the great dark mountain, at the close of the long quiet day. And that is where we began, you remember, in the dark hour before the dawn, with that small single flame, and the old healer sleeping, and the great silence all around. And we have come, now, the whole long slow way around the day, from that dark cold morning, through the prayers and the gathering, and the tending and the resting, all the long slow way around to this dark quiet night. And we have come back, at the last, to the very place we started, to the small gold lamp, and the sleeping healer, and the great silence, the same small flame burning on in the same great dark. The great slow circle of the day closed quietly at last. The small wheel turned once fully round, the way it has turned 10,000 times before, and the way it will turn 10,000 times again. The small faithful turning of the small good life, around and around, through the long slow years. So let us leave him there, the old healer, sleeping his slow deep sleep in the small gold lamplight, in the great silence of the mountain night. There is nothing more that he needs from us, and nothing more that we need from him. The long day is done, the good work is done. The 2 patients are tended, the cupboard is kept, the prayers are said, the fire is banked, the lamp is lit, and the old healer sleeps, and the mountain holds its great deep silence, and the stars wheel slowly over the silent snows, and the small lamp burns on faithfully in the great dark, and all is well, and all is quiet, and all is at peace. And so, wherever you are, as you lie in your own warm dark, let the small gold lamp of the old healer's hut be the last small light in your mind, the small steady faithful flame in the great quiet dark, burning slow and warm and gold, asking nothing of you, only burning, quietly, faithfully, against the dark, while the old healer sleeps. And the mountain holds its silence, and the long night turns slowly on toward the distant dawn. There is nothing to remember. There was never anything to remember. You did not need to hold on to any of it. The names of the herbs, the 3 slow humors, the reading of the pulse, the burning of the points, the turning of the seasons. Let it all drift away now, gently, like the thin grey smoke drifting up from the banked fire and out through the smoke hole into the great dark, like the soft prayers drifting out from the prayer flags upon the slow night wind, like the slow breath of the sleeping healer drifting slowly in and slowly out in the small gold lamplight. Let it all drift away. Let the whole long quiet day drift slowly away into the great silence, and let yourself drift slowly with it down and down into the warm dark, into the deep soft quiet, into the slow deep sleep that is waiting for you now, as it waited for the old healer at the close of the long good day. Let the shoulders soften, let the breathing slow, let the small concerns of your own day, whatever day it has been, settle slowly to the bottom of the mind, like fine silt settling slowly to the bottom of a clear, still pool, and let the water above grow clear, and still and quiet as a high mountain lake at dawn when there is no wind upon it. The lamp burns low, the fire sleeps beneath its ash, the healer sleeps, and the mountain holds its silence, and the stars wheel slowly over the silent snows, and there is nothing left to do now, nothing at all, but to let your eyes close, if they have not closed already, and to let the warm dark gather you in, the way the small warm hut gathers in the old healer, the way the great silence gathers in the small lamp's light, and to drift, slowly, gently, with the slow turning of the great quiet wheel, down into the deep, warm peace of sleep. Sleep now. The long day is done, and all is well, and all is quiet, and all is at peace. The small lamp burns on, faithfully, in the great dark and watches over your rest, as it watches over the sleeping healer, high on the great dark mountain, at the close of the long quiet day. Sleep now, and rest, and let the great silence hold you gently through the long quiet night, until the slow grey light of the morning comes again, far off, beyond the long dark line of the peaks. Rest well, sleep deeply, and we will be here again, by the small warm fire, with another slow quiet story, whenever you should wish to return. Until then, let the lamp burn low, and let the silence hold you, and let yourself drift, slowly, gently, down into the deep, warm dark, and sleep.